Good morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studios. Live today. I had a great sit down yesterday with Adam Laxalt, former Attorney General of Nevada. He's an old friend of mine. I've known Adam for, my gosh, 8, 9 years now. And he's on California as well as he begins his challenge for United States Senate. He's a prohibitive favorite to go up against Cortez Masto, I think her name is. It's the invisible senator. Nobody knows her in Nevada. I could have sat next to her and had dinner with her in D.C. 20 times and not known who she is. She got nothing done. And Adam Laxalt, of course, of the fabled grandson of Paul Laxalt, I should say, the fabled Senator Laxalt's grandson. Paul Laxalt was a giant, but people my age remember him, and people who are under the age of 40 don't. Paul Laxalt was a giant. Adam Laxalt is a genius. Guy is a Georgetown law grad, a Navy lawyer, former Attorney General of the state. Made an unsuccessful bid for governor. For some reason, John Ralston hates him. I don't know why, but he's really quite a good guy, and he will be the 51st vote. Going to win Nevada, going to turn the Senate back over to Leader Mitch McConnell's hands. I just tweeted out Adam Laxalt's website. Go over there and give him $10. He's one of the top three races. We got to win New Hampshire. Got to get Johnson in that race. And then we need two more. And they come from a universe of three: Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. In Georgia, I think Herschel Walker is going to be the nominee. In Arizona, I'm not sure. I think it'll be Mark Brnovich. I know it will be Adam Laxalt in Nevada, so I don't mind getting involved early. I think we'll hold on to Ohio. Hope we hold on to Pennsylvania. Believe we'll hold on to Missouri unless Eric Greitens is nominated, in which case we're going to have to pick up 4 seats because we're going to lose that seat. And maybe Pennsylvania. I'm a realist, I'm objective. I just tell you the best candidate in Nevada is Adam Laxalt. When I don't know and there are 6 great candidates like Ohio, I do what I'm going to do in Ohio, which is go moderate a debate and stay out of it. When you've got 6 great candidates, stay away. When you've got one prohibitive favorite, like Adam Laxalt, I really would prefer for the others to pull out because Adam is going to be the nominee, doesn't need to spend his money on a primary campaign. In Arizona, there are 2 or 3 people who are going to go through the finish line. It's a late August primary. I think Brnovich is probably the favorite, given that he's been a superb attorney general. In Georgia, I think Herschel's the prohibitive favorite, but I'm going to meet him, by the way, in October for the first time. On October 13th, I'm going down to the Atlanta History Center with Brian Westbury, the economist, Alfredo Ortiz, the head of the Job Creators Network, who is sponsoring the event, and Herschel. People don't really know how famous Herschel is in Georgia. If the guy had gone to Ohio State, he'd be president. But he didn't go to Ohio State. He went to Georgia. So he's going to be down there. Don't miss tomorrow, by the way. I'm going to have Doug LeMaurice on as we talk about the College Football Playoff podcast. Every Friday in the first hour, I do movies and sports because it's Friday. But today I got a lot of news. Number one, the FDA says if you're 65 or older, go get a booster. So I'm going to go get a booster tomorrow. It'll be 8 months tomorrow, and I'm going to go get a booster. Why? Because I don't want to get this. Like Pastor Jeffress said yesterday, why in the world would you want to run a risk? God has been miraculous in his grace through the agency of people of medicine and science. It's effectively wonderful thing. I think that would make the booster available for anyone who wants it, but of course the FDA being the FDA has to screw it up. But I'm 65, so I can go get it. I'm going to go get it tomorrow. I hope you do too if you've had your 2 shots. And if you haven't, I hope you go get your first one. The biggest story is in these 2 stories right here. New York Times. Biden huddles with Democrats as divisions threaten his agenda. They cannot agree. The squad runs the House. And the squad wants to spend $5 trillion and raise taxes to extraordinary heights. In the Senate, every Democrat needs to vote for this because not one Republican is going to vote for it. Not one. They're going to have to go back and amend the reconciliation bill that the budget that they passed earlier, and amend the reconciliation instructions to include a debt hike. And Mitch McConnell made it clear again yesterday. They're not going to get one Republican vote along the way because they rolled the Republicans, and so they broke it. They bought it. At the end of the New York Times, it says Democrats across the ideological spectrum said forging a consensus was a tall order. We've got a hectic few days ahead, Representative Josh Gottheimer, a moderate from New Jersey, said after emerging from his negotiating session with Mr. Biden and the other lawmakers. They can only lose 4 votes in the House. They can't lose 1 vote in the Senate. And they have the crazy squad people. The crazies. They're just absolutely crazy. They want to spend all of your money. And they want to forgive all of the college debt. They want to pay for everyone's college. and they want to give you a check instead. And so they don't want to compromise with anybody. And, the sane Democrats like Joe Manchin are saying, we're not going to do that. I got to get elected. And the moderate Democrats who actually don't want to lose their job in next fall's elections, which they will, that leads to another headline, the Washington Post. Biden huddles with warring Democrats as party's agenda hangs in the balance. Because you see, finally, elite media has figured out the Republicans aren't helping. If the government shuts down, it's the Democrats' fault. If the debt limit is exceeded and no more debt can be issued and the full faith and credit of the United States takes a ding, it's the Democrats' fault. The Democrats run everything. They're begging Mitch and the Republicans to help them, but they didn't listen to the Republicans when the Republicans said, do this or that, or a little bit of give here, a little bit of give there. No, they rolled them. So now they broke it. They bought it. CNN Politics. Anxious Democrats float Plan B. Raise the debt ceiling on a party line vote, which is exactly what I wrote in the Washington Post yesterday, and which is exactly what I spent most of yesterday's show saying needs to happen. And it just means Nancy Pelosi has to look up from her somewhat cloudy thinking and say, what do we need to do? And Jim Cooper says, well, we really ought to rewrite the budget bill and reopen reconciliation. They can do that, but as the roll call detailed, and I've tweeted out a link to this so you can read it, potential fallback for debt ceiling fraught with complications, because reopening the fiscal 2022 budget resolution to add debt limit is possible, but it takes time, at least 4 weeks. We run out of money in the United States in 4 weeks. So Democrats have to get going right now, but they have to agree among themselves on what they have to get going on. Then they better hope that the so-called Section 304 resolution detailed in this story from Roll Call, which I posted over at Twitter, gets discharged from the Budget Committee. They better hope the parliamentarian of the Senate agrees with them, because they're just screwed because they rolled the Republicans. You got to be nice to the people who you climb over on the way up the ladder, because you may need their help staying up there. We're not going to help. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is rightly being hit with charges of racism. Why is it only the Haitian at the border are being turned back and bussed immediately back to their country and flown back to their country? Why just the Haitians? Why just the black people, Joe Biden? And the answer, of course, lies in the fact that he's befuddled and has no idea what's going on at the border. Now, Joe Biden did pledge to double U.S. donations of Pfizer vaccine for the poor countries out there, which is good, but he really ought to be out there focusing on a message of what's going on at the border. Secretary Mayorkas went to the House yesterday again. He had this exchange with Michael McCaul, who's the ranking Republican on Homeland Security, cut number 8.
I did not say that we are going to lose. That's unequivocally false, number one. And number two, we have not seen before such a rapid migration, irregular migration of individuals as we have observed and experienced with respect to the Haitians who've crossed the border in Del Rio, Texas. That has been an unprecedented speed.
But did you have any warning signs? When the sector chief is being warned about this, when the Panama foreign minister is warning on June the 3rd, and here we are in September, months later. Did you see this coming?
Well, so we watched the flow of individuals who are seeking to migrate irregularly through Mexico from the Northern Triangle countries and further south. We do indeed track it. And nevertheless, Congressman, as I previously articulated, the speed with which this materialized is unprecedented.
He's more interested in saying irregularly migrated than in answering the question that, yeah, we were surprised. We're not very good at our job. Sorry. We're just lousy at this. Meanwhile, thousands of Haitians under the Del Rio Bridge, Joe Biden being accused of racism and the Democrats broken up. Pretty good Thursday. Pretty good Thursday when the Democrats cannot agree on anything. But get those people some help under the bridge. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Go anywhere.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt,
but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
When black celebrities dare to defy the orthodoxy and status quo, they are immediately torpedoed by the machine. Kanye West, Nicki Minaj, you see what they tried to do to many different black athletes that speak out against forced vaccinations. Nicki Minaj has realized that this regime does not answer questions. They operate with force. This is not a government that persuades people. They are a coercive regime. The First Amendment of the United States protects the things that we are as human beings. We are talking beings. We are thinking beings. We are worshiping beings.
Keep up with what's trending.
Well, it's morning again, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for joining me this morning. I want to explain to you the dilemma again that the Democrats are in and why the Republicans will not be throwing them the lifeline that they are begging them for. Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat, Virginia, former nominee for vice president in Hillary Clinton's ill-fated 2016 campaign, admitted yesterday they ought to have included a debt hike in the reconciliation instructions so they could pass it with a simple majority. That's the only time you get to use a majority in the Senate, is when you have passed a budget with instructions to reconcile the House and the Senate versions, and then when you pass a bill subject to that budget, it only takes 50 votes in the Senate plus the vice president 51. They included no such instructions, so they have to go back and amend the budget resolution, which opens up the whole thing to scrutiny again, and the public focuses again that they want to spend $5 trillion. Why $5 trillion? Because it's going to authorize $3.5 trillion in spending in excess of revenue, and they've authorized $1.5 trillion in an infrastructure bill, which is stuck in the House because the squad runs the House, and the squad thinks $1.5 trillion, which is 60% higher than the Barack Obama stimulus, which broke the bank in 2009 and launched the Tea Party. They're spending more money than we spent in World War II. For what? Not for booster shots. They don't believe in booster shots. The FDA said, no, booster shots only if you're 65 or older. They're just spending your money. They're spending your kids' money, they're spending your grandkids' money, and they're spending it on dresses that say tax the rich so that AOC can go to the Met Gala. It's really insane. But the squad is running. The squad stripped money out of the budget for Israel's Iron Dome, which is not an offensive weapon. It's a defensive weapon against terrorists in Gaza and terrorists in South Lebanon. But they don't want Israel to be able to defend themselves. The squad runs the Democratic Congress, the House. And the squad wants to spend all this money. They want to tax everything that moves. And in the Senate, where there's only 50 Democrats anyway, the least common denominator decides. It's like whoever has the narrowest ruling of the 9, if it's a 5-4 decision on the court, that's the language, that's the opinion that controls future cases. It's the decisive opinion. And here, if you're, just imagine you're out with 9 friends, and 4 of you want to eat Mexican, and 4 of you want to eat Chinese. The one who hasn't decided is going to pick Mexican or Chinese. Well, in the House, they've got more people who want Chinese than Mexican, and in the Senate, they've got more people who want Mexican than Chinese. But both the Senate and the House have got to approve the choice of restaurant. And so whichever senator threatens to walk away and ruin the party, ruins the party. I love this. And I want no one, not one Republican, to say, we will help you out. Now, yesterday I wrote a piece for the Washington Post. I promised it to you yesterday. I got it done. It got up at the Post very quickly. It attracted 2,300, I'm sure, comments that were applauding it. Don't you think, Dwayne? Pretty rock solid.
Oh, it's almost guaranteed that the responses are going to be very animated.
Because they're usually 100% with me, and I don't read them because I never read the comments. But it was titled in a way to attract the applause of the readerships. The Republicans want no part of a debt ceiling hike. Good for them. So I'm sure, I explained it all there, I'm sure they will agree. Now, yesterday markets rallied because Jerome Powell said eventually we have to stop giving money away. So while you might be buying a house, your interest rate went up to 1.336 on the 10-year Treasury. Gold went down a little bit because that's almost a tiny bit of anti-inflationary action to $17.70 an ounce. If you want to buy some gold, good time to go get it at hughgold.com, hughgold.com. Birch Gold sponsors this segment. You can also send my name, Hugh, to 474747. The Dow went up 338 points. The S&P went up 41. The NASDAQ went up 150. Gold stayed the same. Inflation is still coming because they're about to spend between $2 and $5 trillion that they don't have. Go to hughgold.com. Buy yourself gold, Krugerrand's, Eagles, Maple Leafs, or roll over a portion of your IRA or 401k into a Birch Gold attended to 401 IRA vault and do it today. Text Hugh to 474747.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. It's not surprising that Joe Biden wants to turn the page on his incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan and the abandonment of U.S. citizens and our allies there. Almost as unsurprising as the media's craven effort to help him. Even as Americans remain hostage in Afghanistan and the Taliban flaunts the military equipment we left them, the news has shifted to other domestic stories. It's inexplicable. Their silence is a scandal. But sadly, we've grown used to seeing the media try to influence public opinion in a way that benefits their chosen candidates. Let's hope that this time, Americans see through the manipulation. So long as America is being humiliated by a group of Taliban savages and our fellow citizens or captives, we deserve the full story. We should demand that the media give it to us. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy. For those considering a career in politics and policy.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
The accusations were outlandish, coming as they do from a book that isn't even released yet, co-authored by Bob Woodward, who has been irrelevant for the last 40 years, has published books that are based upon supposition and tissues of lies, because this man has no access, especially to a conservative administration like President Trump's. But like those broken clocks that are right twice a day, it seems that this story, that General Milley, 2 days after the events of January the 6th, called up General Lee of the People's Liberation Army of Communist China to assure them that he would give them a heads up if President Trump, his commander, decided to attack China, is the definition of giving aid and support to our enemies. It is the textbook legal definition of treason. Earlier today, the office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who, let's be clear here, for those who are not wonks in the swamp, who haven't spent decades in national security, we have a peculiar system in the United States. What you just heard from Kirby, the Chief of the Defense Staff, is a lie. We do not have a senior uniformed officer in the chain of command like other nations do. The Constitution is crystal clear. America has one commander-in-chief. It's not the Speaker of the House.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
You wrote My Way for your friend Frank Sinatra. Now, all of us, I think in some ways the greatest thing anybody can do is to do something that's so great, people don't even wonder who did it. They just assume it was always there. The same thing with the theme song from The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. You wrote that. Let's go there, because that's just a monumental moment in both of your careers. I mean, he had already had 20 careers up to this moment.
It was Vegas, Rat Pack. I got to know him in the 60s. I hung around him. Let's not forget Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, very talented men. But up until 68, I was still writing. I was living in Europe, which I loved. I had the gravitas of being a writer because of The Tonight Show, The Longest Day, etc. So when I met him in Miami, where we used to work at the Fontainebleau Hotel, he was doing a film. I was performing. He said, I'm quitting show business. I'm going to retire. I've had enough. Rat Pack's over. I'm being hassled by the FBI, and I'm tired. I'm getting out of here. But I'm going to do one more album. With that, and him telling me that he was quitting and retiring and believing him, I couldn't believe it. So I went back to New York, where I was living at the time, and I'm sitting in my apartment, and I started metaphorically with, and now the end is near, and so I faced the final curtain. And I started writing it as if he were writing it, and writing words I would never write as a craftsman, ate it up, spit it out, but these were the kind of words that he used. So I finished it 5 hours later. I called him at Caesar's Palace, where he was doing one of his last engagements. And I said, sir, I've got something I think you might like for the album. He said, bring it out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to streaming.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in the Relief Factor studio live on this Thursday morning. The biggest story is, of course, the fact that the Democrats are screwed on the reconciliation. But the one that has the most media attention are the Haitians at the border, because there are pictures. If there aren't pictures and budget reconciliation and Democrats squabbling, they don't have a lot of pictures. They have pictures of Democrats going to see Joe Biden and coming out looking sad, but that takes a storyteller, and I'm not available for people to understand why they look sad, because they can't agree and AOC has them hostage. However, there are lots of pictures of Border Patrolmen on horses, using their reins to control their horses. They are not whipping the Haitians. They are cowboys. Maybe they haven't seen the new season of Yellowstone and don't understand that cowboys use their reins. But Maxine Waters, God bless her, she is always good for radio. Maxine Waters took to the press corps yesterday, cut number 10.
What the hell are we doing here? What we witnessed takes us back hundreds of years. What we witnessed was worse than what we witnessed in slavery. Cowboys with their reins again, whipping black people, Haitians, into the water where they're scrambling and falling down, and all they're trying to do is escape from violence in their country. And we're saying to the president and
I actually don't think it's worse than slavery. I'll go out on a limb. I don't believe being put on a bus and then a plane to go back to Haiti is worse than slavery. And I know they were not being whipped just like the enslaved were whipped. Maxine's getting a little old. Cut number 11, she kept going.
And we're saying to the president and everybody else, you got to stop this madness. And I want to know, in the first place, who's paying these cowboys to do this work? They've got to be gotten rid of. They've gotten to be stopped. It cannot go on. And so I thank all of you for being here today. Write the story. Tell the story about what is going on. And let people know that they're trying to take us back to slavery days, and worse than that. And the
Chairman of the House Banking Committee right there. They is the Border Patrol, the cowboys. Joe Biden is trying to take us back. The Border Patrol works for Joe Biden, so Joe Biden is trying to take us back to slavery days. You remember, he's the one who accused Mitt Romney of wanting to bring the chains back. So obviously the tables have turned. Kenneth Morton, ABC News, tells the border whip story, ignoring again the attempted hijack of the bus. It wasn't an attempt, it was successful. And once again, getting the reins whip narrative wrong. Cut number 12.
And tonight, amid questions over images the White House called horrific, DHS now launching an investigation into these images, showing Border Patrol agents on horses, confronting migrants as they enter Texas from Mexico. Tonight, President Biden reacting to those chaotic scenes.
We will get it under control.
The union representing Border Patrol agents saying that's their training.
David, sources tell us agents are still patrolling this border on horseback like they've always done, but DHS says it right now has agency monitors on the ground to make sure those policies are being followed.
So we now have Border Patrol monitors. What are they? Are they on little horses? Are they on ATVs?
Mules. They got to be on mules.
They're on mules. They're probably like the preacher on the mule in the old Western.
Yes.
That's what they've got, a mule and a black hat, like the Undertaker walking slowly behind the old Western. They use horses because the ATVs can't go play. They use horses in the West. I've been on a horse once at Trails West, a Young Life family camp when my kids were little. We went there, I got on a horse. It was not a happy experience. Nevertheless, the horses they're not whipping the Haitians. They are using crowd control techniques. By the way, horses are used in New York City, where apparently slavery is making a comeback. Washington, D.C., where Maxine Waters was making her speech. Sheila Jackson-Lee got on CNN with Jake Tapper yesterday. Cut number 14.
Why don't we start from point A, and that is, let us change the narrative. The narrative is that we have a human rights crisis at the border. I am a Texan. We have about 2,000 miles, a little under 2,000 miles of border, and most of that border is well protected with legal points of entry, and it operates appropriately. But what has happened is, because of the Trump relic of Title 42 and the demonizing of immigrants through our governor, Governor Abbott, who's looking toward the next election, we can't seem to really know how to handle this surge. I think the Biden administration is very eager to adhere to that we are a land of immigrants and a land of laws. And that is what Secretary Mayorkas was saying, that he has the ability to provide security of the border, but also I think our meeting with a number of officials in the White House got them to understand that, one, Title 42 is discretionary. Even DHS said that the medical expertise that was used there may not have been that accurate. And again, it is a relic of the Trump administration. Here's what we want to see. A moratorium and/or suspension of Title 42 to be able to use the resources that have been sent to the border, meaning personnel, to determine and do as migrants did in other surges in 2014, surges in the spring of 2021, to be given the determination of who could get an asylum appointment, who could get in court because they were families. We know some will have to be removed at some point, but when you have a narrative of the largest deportation in months or years, that does not fit favorably. That is not the administration. I know their heart is different. We saw that. We feel that we're going to see some changes, and we're going to also understand, Jake, that as the Homeland Security has said, the migrants are not national security threats.
Jake Tapper bringing the hammer. Up, he didn't. The narrative. What matters are facts on the ground, not the narrative, which means the order in which you tell them or don't tell them or leave them out. There are tens of thousands of Haitians crossing the Rio Grande unimpeded and staying in squalid conditions under the Del Rio bus. What is the administration going to do? Well, they sent some people on horseback, but that upset people, so now we're going to have monitors of the horseback riders on mules. It's really quite something. Meanwhile, John Kerry, and understand there's a genocide underway. Now, when you hear the word Uyghurs in 2021, think Jews in 1939. All right. Here's John Kerry on Bloomberg with David Weston, cut number 16.
Another issue related to China is importing of solar panels, because clearly a priority of the Biden administration is really addressing climate, but it's not the only priority. There are other things as well, such as the Uyghur situation in the West. What is the process by which one trades off climate against human rights?
Well, life is always full of tough choices in the relationship between nations.
Is always full of tough choices about the Jews. That's how it would be translated in 1941. 1939, John Kerry being asked about importing Krupp-manufactured weapons for the use of the United States military, or maybe German banks, or whether we ought to send an ambassador or something like that, get asked about the poor Jews who are allegedly being rounded up in Germany, and John Kerry says this, cut number 17. Not 17, cut.
Another issue related to China is importing of solar panels, because clearly a priority of the Biden administration is really addressing climate, but it's not the only priority. There are other things as well, such as the Uyghur situation in the West. What is the process by which one trades off climate against human rights?
Well, life is always full of tough choices in the relationship between nations.
What to do with the Haitians, where the tough choice has to be made? Jacob Soboroff, my friend over at MSNBC, and Ken Delanian are reporting that the Biden administration is advertising for a new migrant detention facility. They want to build a new migrant and detention facility, and they're going to operate it. So that makes sense, right? Guess where they're going to build it? Do we have the Jeopardy theme? Can we get the Jeopardy theme?
I don't know.
We're going to build a new migrant. We need guards who can speak Spanish and Haitian Creole. This is an opportunity if you're in the business sector. The Biden administration, which has the golden touch, everything they turn to turns to touch. And it's not golden. They've got the golden touch in reverse. Everything they turn to, they touch, turns into this. And so they've advertised they need a new migrant detention facility.
Run by who?
And well, I need the Jeopardy theme. I'm not going to tell anyone until we get the Jeopardy theme. They're thinking about it. Who is going to run? Well, the people who are going to run it are going to be guards who speak Spanish or Haitian Creole. So they're going to recruit in Florida. So you might think that they're going to recruit in Florida, but that's not the case. And you see, if I had my board that Dwayne won't give me, he won't give me back my board of sound effects, I would have the Jeopardy button ready to go. Because this is really a Jeopardy button thing. Where are we going to build the new... There we go. Where are we going to build the new... Got to be in the form of a question, remember. We're going to build a new Haitian detention facility. And the answer is, must be in the form of a question, where are we going to build it? We're going to staff it with Spanish and Haitian Creole guards, according to government records. Where are we going to build it? The answer is Guantanamo Bay. That's right. We're going to go to Gitmo and put the Haitians at Gitmo. Now, my friends, what do you think the left is going to think about that?
They're going to have a cow.
How is
that.
AOC going to respond to
she
that
already
one?
has. On Twitter, it's utterly horrible.
Oh, well, of course it is. But look, you got to go somewhere.
But it's
in a statement to NBC News, DHS says it is not sending and will not send Haitian nationals being encountered at the southwest border to the Migrant Operations Center in Gitmo. The MOC has been used to process migrants interdicted at sea for third country resettlement. The request for information recently posted as a typical routine step in a contract renewal and is unrelated to the southwest border. No, we don't know. We're skeptical. They're saying, no, that's just, we use Gitmo for other things all the time. So don't connect our advertisement of Gitmo expanding and needing Spanish-speaking Haitian Creole people. We're only going to put the Haitians there that we get at sea. We're not going to get the Haitians that we get at the Rio Grande. That's basically what they're saying. I'm saying it's time for ReliefFactor.com. All right, ReliefFactor.com. There it goes. Icarian and Kirkman, resveratrol, omega. Okay, there we go. And right down the hatch for my lukewarm coffee. It's wonderful. Icarian and Kirkman, resveratrol, omega. Absolutely wonderful stuff. Now, I'm sitting around in my doofus doing nothing in California. I had a nice long meeting with Adam Laxalt yesterday. We're celebrating Pete Wilson tonight. I'll sit around doing nothing tomorrow, and then I'll get on a plane, and then I'll go back to walking and running next week. It's my week off from being a semi-responsible aging adult because I'm not getting my steps in. Nevertheless, I'm not trundling my 6 or 10 miles. I'll go back to it Saturday. But ReliefFactor.com is helping with the sitting around, and it will help you if you just sit around. I am reaching for the peanut butter more. ReliefFactor.com helps you whether or not you're a sit around or a go around or get out there person. You ought to be the latter, but I'm taking a week off. Good for the body and soul once in a while. Rest up those limbs. But ReliefFactor.com, you do not take a rest from. So the squad cut out Iron Dome funding. Michael Oren has written, maybe we better take a look at our relationship with America. The squad is doing just what they want to, ruining the deal with Israel. Stay tuned.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The left hated Trump because they knew he would get down and dirty with them. That's why they hated Trump. Because Trump knew how to play their game, so they had to destroy him. They're used to these Republicans. Well, yes, I'm so sophisticated, I'm smart, and I can run the Senate perfectly, and I can run the House perfectly, so we're going to accomplish A, B, and C. But when it comes to advancing our agenda beyond the courts, that's where I stop. They knew they didn't have fighters. We don't. Who do we have? Who do we have right now in the Republican Party? A handful of people in the Senate, a handful of people in the House that you know are going to press a conservative agenda going forward. But they hated Trump, not because he was unsophisticated. They hated him because he knew them. And that's the same reason they hated Larry Elder. Because they knew that he would cause damage to the Democrat Party. I look at these Democrats that come out and, Nancy Pelosi overseas talking about, she's admitted that, basically China, there's a genocide of Uyghurs. But she believes that man-made climate change is a bigger issue. So that America has to continue to work with China. That's why they didn't care about, and why they don't care about now, Americans that are still left behind and being held hostage. Americans are still being held hostage. And we're silent.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
This clown, this loser, is stalking a woman in a Target. I don't even know where it was. I don't know what city this happened in. I haven't seen any media coverage. I just saw the clip, and I want to share it with you. Because as somebody tweeted out the question, what kind of a loser hangs out in a Target and harasses women? They should lock this guy up. This guy's walking around, and if you have access and you can see the video, not only is he stalking this woman who's minding her own business and shopping in Target, but she doesn't have her mask on. And so he wants to take her on. I want to play this clip for you. This dummy is not only stalking and harassing this woman who wisely took out her phone to tape the whole incident, he's got a stupid badge on his ugly T-shirt. He's got a pin on that evidently says, I'm vaccinated. Like, you got to go around and put a pin on why don't you put a tattoo on your forehead that says you're vaccinated, dummy, you loser? Listen to this guy. Here's
at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined from Israel by Ambassador Michael Oren, formerly the Israeli ambassador to the United States. There's a headline in the Times of Israel today. Ex-ambassador, one said Michael Oren, calls for rethink on U.S. military aid amid Iron Dome controversy. It's a very winsome picture of a very stern-looking Michael Oren, but I'm upset, Mr. Ambassador. I'm upset because it refers to you as Oren, a noted academic and author, said that military aid to Israel being used increasingly as a tool against Jerusalem by left-wing Democrats. That's true, but it doesn't say Oren, a noted academic, author, and weekly guest on the Hugh Hewitt Show. So something's wrong with your PR strategy.
Or short story and novel writer.
That's true. To those who call in, to those who call in,
grandfather of my sixth grandchild this week. Really,
Mazel tov. So I think this is a really important story. Because the left is only get stronger, and these people are only get crazier. Tell people what you recommended.
Well, I recommend that we sort of read the writing on the wall. In the article, I said it's a shot across a prow, and it's a very well-aimed one. Now, this is not going to be the end of this process. It's going to be the beginning of the process. And going back to the last presidential election, where you had candidates like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and even Pete Buttigieg getting up there and saying we should use aid as a way of sort of arm-twisting Israel, I began to think to myself, wait a minute. This aid is not as big a portion of our defense budget that it used to be. It had great significance when America was actually in the Middle East and fighting in the Middle East. It's not anymore. Can we afford to look weak? Can we afford to look like we're being extorted? And I don't think we can in our neighborhood. So we begin to think, maybe we should be rethinking the aid. Now, the aid packages that President Obama signed with Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to expire in a few years. And the question is, do we want to renew that type of arrangement, or should we move to a different type of arrangement in which the United States and Israel are really cooperating together in areas that are vital for our common security? That would be in our artificial intelligence, in cyber defense, many areas we can collaborate where America contributing to Israel's capabilities, and we're a world leader in all these fields, would actually redound to America's security benefit as well.
Well, I point out that the Chinese will probably be very happy to help you with Iron Dome, but I want to point out as well, the Iron Dome funding, which Democrats cut this week, is defensive funding. It protects Israel from terrorist rockets from the south and terrorist rockets from the north. Now, AOC, Rashid Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar, if they had a spelling bee, I'm not sure if any of them would win, but they're not very smart about the political optics. This is awful for the Democrats. And of course, many of the supporters of Israel, the handful that remain in the Democratic Party, instantly introduced a bill to make good on their Screw the Israel movement. But the message is sent, if they won't send you defensive weapons, you're not even going to get the blankets that Obama sent to Ukraine.
Look, as bad as it is for the Democrats, trust me, it's worse for the Palestinians.
Okay.
Because Iron Dome saves thousands, perhaps even tens of thousands of Palestinian lives. What would happen if Hamas, we didn't have Iron Dome and Hamas is pummeling us with rockets every day, thousands of rockets? Israel would have no choice but to invade the Gaza Strip. And when you invade the Gaza Strip, you're going to kill thousands of people, maybe more. So Hamas, the Iron Dome not only saves Israeli lives, it saves a far greater number of Palestinian lives. And it says a lot about, the squad, that they so hate Israel and so want to hurt Israel that they're willing to sacrifice thousands of Palestinian lives. That really is what they're about.
Let's talk about that, because you used the right word. Rashid Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and AOC, they don't dispute the policy. They simply hate Israel. And I mean, when they get unguarded, they put it out there. Why is the Democratic caucus indulging this?
Well, I don't know. There was a lot of legislative, I think, foul-ups there, where they thought perhaps by putting this rider in there for the $1 billion for Iron Dome, they could get some Republican support for their budget bill, and it didn't work. And they'll probably get this bill passed in a different way, the $1 billion in a separate piece of legislation. Oh, that's well and good, but this is the beginning of this process, Hugh, as I said, and I've seen it grow over the years. It's not getting back in the bottle.
I think we need to get, the Republicans are going to vote against this budget bill, and then Democrats are going to say Republicans don't like Israel either, and that will be a lie, because Republicans always support funding for Israel, but they'll try and do a false equivalent. This is different. This hardcore group are anti-Israel. Does Israel know that?
Yeah, sure. Not all Israelis understand that, and they don't understand that for the squad and others like them, it's not what we do; it's who we are. We're for their, in their view, we're a white colonialist, racist state, and whatever we do, see, even if we created a Palestinian state tomorrow, they'd call it Palestinian washing.
Yeah,
we're great on gay rights; they call it pink washing. Everybody's washing because we're fundamentally bad, and nothing's going to change about that. We got to remind your listeners all the time that the overwhelming majority of American aid to Israel is spent in the United States. It's a subsidy for the American arms industry. So let the squad go to places in Alabama and places in Texas where they make these arms and say, guys, we so hate out of Israel that we don't really care about your jobs. You're going to be unemployed because of our crazy ideology.
They do. We didn't even get to the second story. Israel, U.S. said to discuss Plan B if Iran nuclear talks don't resume. Do you know what Plan B is, Michael Oren?
I know what I hope it is, and that is that the United States is going to back us when we do something.
Good. More on that next week. Ambassador Michael Oren. Follow him at Dr. Michael Oren on Twitter. Follow me to the next hour of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
generations of imbeciles are enough, declared the Supreme Court in Buck versus Bell, decision of 1927. I'm reading from timeline.com. Quote, "It is better for all the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind." That decision was written by Oliver Wendell Holmes, and forced sterilization became fully legal in the United States. The case came at the height of popularity for the pseudosciences of eugenics, which maintained that negative character traits like criminality and stupidity were entirely the product of bad genes. The court decision that set the precedent for government intervention on the sterilization of women was the Jacobson v. Massachusetts. Thankfully, many decades later, there was a lawsuit that included Dolores Madrigal, who was the lead plaintiff in the 1978 case, which brought suit against L.A. County's USC Medical Center for its non-consensual sterilization of Mexican-American women in the 1960s and 70s. It would make sense why certain communities are apprehensive of the government forcibly putting medicine on you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
On January the 8th, 2 days after the riots on Capitol Hill, General Mark Milley called General Li Zhongcheng of the People's Liberation Army of Communist China. In that call, he said the following: "We are 100% steady. Everything is fine." And he assured the communist general that there would be no attack on China. Now, on the one hand, I have to say the whole story is absurd because what attack on China? When did Donald Trump, in relation to January the 6th or any time, say that he's about to launch a nuclear attack against nuclear China? It's garbage. But Milley is the man who, remember, acted like a politician when he did a video apologizing for standing next to his commander-in-chief after he walked across Lafayette Square after days and days and days of rioting, hundreds of police officers injured, and the church of the president, St. John's Episcopal Church, was firebombed. Milley was ashamed of the restoration of order because Donald Trump was his commander-in-chief. So, with that fact pattern in mind, with his assertion that critical race theory is great, should be taught at West Point, I'm white and I want to know what white rage is, it is absolutely plausible that this man did what he did.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Oh, is she?
What are you doing? This is between the two of us.
So what? Leave her alone. You got your mask on, you're safe. I'm sure you're vaccinated too.
He is. He has a badge that says it.
I do. So my wife is a doctor who specializes in infectious disease.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that she just doesn't know what she's talking about?
It's her choice. It's her choice. Just leave her alone.
No, there's a store requirement and a state requirement. It's not her choice.
You can't harass her.
It's
what are you
all of
even
our
in here
job
for?
as a community to come together.
You're not
and
in
make
shopping.
sure
You're
that
going
people are
around to
shamed.
harass people.
And make sure that people are shamed
He was
when they
following me.
put the
He
rest
won't
of
leave
us
me
at
alone.
risk.
Put the rest of us at risk. He's vaccinated.
I know, and he has a badge on. Stop following me.
It doesn't work. I know. We've already had it in the community, so I'm not putting that much.
By publicly shaming me?
The public venue. Yeah, you're making a bad decision. You're a bad American.
I am. I totally am. And I voted for Trump.
Yeah, you're a bad person. You're a bad person for doing
She's
that.
not a bad person because my mom was vaccinated and still ended up in the hospital with COVID. It's her choice.
Yeah, well, it's very, very unusual.
Her choice. It's not unusual. I just had somebody die last week of
Doctor
COVID.
specializing in infectious disease. Are you saying that she just makes this stuff up? Is she
Probably. That she has a choice and you have a choice.
Yeah, well, the store has a policy, the state has a policy. You're putting the community...
All right, so you get the idea. The guy, and incidentally, if the guy were to be arrested, I think he ought to be arrested for that stupid hat he's got on. That should be a crime. That ought to be against the law. The moronic hat he's got. Tells you everything you need to know about this guy.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
These powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
This is one of the most significant developments in the history of our species, in the history of human beings. Now, the founders, before the American Revolution, before the French Indian War, what did the Pilgrims bring with them to the shores of America? They brought a civilization with them, the beginnings of Western society. They brought faith, knowledge of the classics, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, Aquinas, Augustine. The whole meaning of a civilization, they brought almost everything except the aristocracy. They started new. They started something from nothing. Thomas Jefferson continued by saying, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Human equality is an idea that civilizations today still reject. This idea that the type of being that you are, a human being, the speaking being, you are a being rooted in reason, that you desire to be as you are. You have a yearn to know. The founders knew this ancient wisdom, and they also knew the developments of the Enlightenment. They said, how can we build a system, build a compact, build a contract that will balance all of these things together and allow for self-government, allow for the pursuit of virtue, which is liberty, put licentiousness in check, have a system where tyranny and the potential for tyranny is put aside so that people are able to live quiet and peaceable lives. In the United States Constitution, it begins with we the people. That's you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live on this Thursday, joined by Florida Senator Rick Scott, chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the man who's going to lead to the new majority returning to Leader McConnell's control at November 2022 elections. Good morning, Rick Scott. How are you?
Good morning. I think Joe Biden is, he must be on our payroll because everything he's doing is disgusting the voters in this country.
He is absolutely a wrecking ball.
Whatever.
He is a wrecking ball. I had a chance to spend a couple of hours yesterday with Adam Laxalt, who's an old friend of mine, and I sat down with Attorney General Laxalt, the former Attorney General of Nevada. He says he's in Nevada. That makes me happy. That puts that on the board in a real way. Do you agree with me that Nevada's in play?
Absolutely. Stop and think about it this way. Cortez Masto only won by 2% 4 years ago. She's not distinguished herself. She's not done anything to help the country or Nevada. And Adam Laxalt's well known, a successful attorney general. We have other people in the race there too. But if you look at the generic ballot in this country in the battleground states, we're way up. So I think we're going to have a big win in Nevada.
Now, Senator Cortez Masto, I asked Adam's friend, Mike, who was with him, to show me a picture of her. I may have sat next to her in a restaurant. I've never seen her on TV. I haven't seen her in Washington. As far as I know, she's an illusion. Is she actually got anything done in the United States Senate?
I don't know anything she's done. I never see her. I never hear from her. My first 2 years when we were in the majority, I've had to preside over the Senate a few hours a week. I never saw her talk.
Do you see?
I don't know what she does.
I've got a list of 4 where we've got to take the seat. 1 is New Hampshire, 2 is Georgia, 3 is Arizona, 4 is Nevada. And they're all in the top tier. We've got to take each of those seats while we defend Pennsylvania and Ohio and Missouri. How do you feel about the magnificent 7 seats, Senator Scott?
I think we're going to get them, and here's why. In Arizona, it's still a Republican state. We have 4 good candidates already in. I still think Doug Ducey will get in the race next year. And Doug won his last race in 2018 by 15 points. But I think any one of these 5 individuals will beat Mark Kelly. We're doing everything we can to explain he is not a moderate. He votes 100% of the way, exactly how Chuck Schumer says. In Georgia, Raphael Warnock is a Marxist. I mean, he's the Doug Jones of this cycle. There's no way he should win, and I don't think he will win. We've got great people in this race. Herschel Walker just got in the race, who looks like he's in the lead right now in our primary. We've got a Navy SEAL, Latham Sadler. We've got a businessman and veteran, Kelvin King. And we've got the Ag Commissioner, Gary Black. We've got great candidates in. We will win. I think Adam Laxalt, or we've got 2 other people in the race, Captain Sam Brown and businesswoman Sherelle Mendenhall in that race. We will win there. Everybody that knows Chris Sununu, give him a call. The public polls show Chris would win by 8 points. So
wow. Given the way that polling tilts Democrat, that means he'd win by double digits going away.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Hassan is already so worried. She already has put a television ad up now. I mean, think about it. She only won by 1,000 votes 4 years ago. And she has not done anything to distinguish herself. And Chris Sununu has been a wonderful governor. Now they have a Republican legislature. This state is going to go Republican. And I think it'll be Chris Sununu. He has not told me he's going to run, but I hope he does.
Now, Senator, I'm going over to Ohio in a couple of weeks to moderate a debate among 6 great Republican candidates. And I mean every one of them. Matt Dolan just got in the race. He's a good guy. I know them all. And I know Tim Ryan, who's a formidable Democrat. I don't get involved in contested primaries where any of the 6 can win. I'm going to endorse Adam Laxalt because he's my friend. I know he's going to win. Georgia, I don't know yet. I will be behind Chris Sununu. I'm not getting involved in Arizona. Tell me a little. I know Mark Brnovich very well, though, and I think he's ahead right now. But tell me a little bit about Ohio, because with 6 great candidates and 6 big piles of money, the danger there is that they set the house on fire and Tim Ryan arrives with the fire truck.
Well, here's what's great. Tim Ryan has an opponent. She's a Bernie Sanders supporter, Morgan Harper. All right. So Tim Ryan's not going to be able to run a race. He's not a moderate. He's a far lefty, but he's not going to be able to run a race as a moderate. And we have wonderful people. I mean, we've got great candidates on our side, one of them will get through the primary, and they're going to win. They're going to win the general election here. It's a Republican state, and Tim Ryan, and whether it's Tim Ryan or Morgan Harper, they're going to be defined so far towards Bernie Sanders. There's no way they will win in Ohio.
Now, I've known Tim for 30 years. He and I went to the same Roman Catholic high school. Are you going to try and elect the socialist? Because it's pretty hard to paint Tim as a radical AOC member of the squad. He started at quarterback at Youngstown State. That's not really where the Marxist gathers.
He votes with Nancy Pelosi. If you look around the country, the Democrats, they vote with Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi would not get elected statewide in Ohio.
100%. And in Georgia, you really do have a Marxist with Raphael Warnock. It's just that there are different kinds of Democrats, and some are easier to beat than others. I don't know where Cortez Masto is, because I have no idea what she does. She's invisible.
Well, she votes whatever Chuck Schumer tells her to do.
Now, Senator, that brings me to the key thing. I wrote in the Post yesterday that not one Republican would support the budget that's coming over with a debt hike attached. They will not support a debt hike relief standing alone. They won't vote for a debt hike ceiling. The Democrats broke it. They bought it. They need to fix it with a new budget amendment. Is that your position?
Absolutely. Democrats have the White House, the House, and the Senate. Right? They don't want any of our involvement with all their radical spending, which we shouldn't be. And so if they want to raise the debt ceiling, they want to do it on their own. You know why? They've been very clear. They don't want to do the debt ceiling on their own because they know it's toxic. They don't want to act like it is. They say, "Oh, and so we want you to be part of our what we're doing here." But what they really want to do is they want to suspend it so they never have to talk about how much it is. Their budget in this deal, the $3.5, which is really $5.5 trillion, will take our debt to $45 trillion. Now let's look at what's happening in families right now with inflation. It's hurting our poorest families. It's hurting our families on fixed income. And the Democrats are causing all this with their spending, and they don't want to be responsible for it. They are responsible for what's going on.
And so do you think you'll keep, for example, you've got to get Senator Murkowski reelected, and I hope you do. I think she's a good, solid vote on 99% of the stuff that we vote on. Will she and any other Republican think about bolting and voting for it? Because it will hurt them. It will really hurt them if they vote for any Democratic
package. I don't think any of them are going to vote for it. We have a clean continuing resolution that McConnell and Richard Shelby put together that will deal. We're not going to do the debt ceiling. That's the Democratic responsibility. We'll keep the government open. We will help with the Afghan refugees, and we'll also help with the disaster relief for Louisiana. So ours is clean, all right. But the Democrats don't want to do it. I don't know if we'll even get a vote on it. So the Democrats might shut down government. I don't think they will, but they could decide to shut down government.
But then the legacy media will say the Republicans have shut down government. That's not true. Democrats are going to make the choice to shut down government if they attach a debt ceiling hike.
There was a poll that came out yesterday that if people understand that it's the Democrats that have all the power up here. So typically, you're right. People want to say, "Oh, it's always the Republicans." No, we've been very clear. This is something that Democrats can do by themselves. They're doing the spending by themselves. They can raise the debt ceiling by themselves. So they'll make a decision.
It's called a Section 304 petition that needs to go to the Budget Committee. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks to amend the budget so that they can do new reconciliation instructions and add back in the debt limit. Have they even begun, or are they sitting around their hands, again, frozen by the Biden incompetence machine?
Well, we had the beginning of before we took the recess in August, where we had the vote-a-rama where they started the budget process, and they can do this. They can do this through reconciliation. We'll have another opportunity to, do amendments. That will explain where Republicans are and where Democrats are. Maybe we'd get something done. But the Democrats can do this on their own. They don't want the American public to understand. They are voting to raise the debt to $45 trillion. That's what they're doing.
Wow. Will the full faith and credit of the United States be compromised because of Democratic inactivity?
It's up to the Democrats. I mean, look, we have a variety of bills. I have a bill with Pat Toomey, the full faith and credit. We say we will not default, but we're going to prioritize our spending. We'll take care of our veterans, our seniors, and we'll make sure we pay our interest. I've got a bill that says going forward, we're not going to keep doing this, so it's going to take a 2/3 vote every time you have a bill that has deficit spending. But the Democrats want to do nothing to fix this. They want to keep spending money to oblivion.
And where do people go if they want to contribute to the efforts to retake the Senate, Senator?
It's NRSC.org. We had 174,000 donations last month. People are on our side. They want to get a majority Republican in the U.S. Senate.
NRSC.org. Senator Rick Scott of Florida. Thank you, Senator. Chairman of the NRSC. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Simon & Schuster's Enemy at the Gates, the latest in the Vince Flynn series by Kyle Mills.
Every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands. Kill him. Jump.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build a superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
You wrote My Way for your friend Frank Sinatra. Now, all of us, I think in some ways the greatest thing anybody can do is to do something that's so great people don't even wonder who did it. They just assume it was always there. The same thing with the theme song from The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. You wrote that. Let's go there because that's just a monumental moment in both of your careers. I mean, he had already had 20 careers up to this moment.
It was Vegas, Rat Pack. I got to know him in the 60s. I hung around him. Let's not forget Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, very talented men. But up until 68, I was still writing. I was living in Europe, which I loved. I had the gravitas of being a writer because of The Tonight Show, The Longest Day, etc. So when I met him in Miami, where we used to work at the Fontainebleau Hotel, he was doing a film. I was performing. He said, I'm quitting show business. I'm going to retire. I've had enough. Rat Pack's over. I'm being hassled by the FBI, and I'm tired. I'm getting out of here. But I'm going to do one more album. With that, and him telling me that he was quitting and retiring and believing him, I couldn't believe it. So I went back to New York, where I was living at the time, and I'm sitting in my apartment. And I started metaphorically with, and now the end is near. And so I faced the final curtain. And I started writing it as if he were writing it. And writing words I would never write as a craftsman, ate it up, spit it out. But these were the kind of words that he used. So I finished it 5 hours later. I called him at Caesar's Palace, where he was doing one of his last engagements. And I said, sir, I've got something I think you might like for the album. He said, bring it out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
This clown, this loser, is stalking a woman in a Target. I don't even know where it was. I don't know what city this happened in. I haven't seen any media coverage. I just saw the clip, and I want to share it with you. Because if somebody tweeted out the question, what kind of a loser hangs out in a Target and harasses women? They should lock this guy up. This guy's walking around, and if you have access and you can see the video, not only is he stalking this woman who's minding her own business and shopping in Target, but she doesn't have her mask on. And so he wants to take her on.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening to me. I want to check the markets today because yesterday Jerome Powell says that we're going to start raising interest rates in 2022. Now, normally the announcement of an interest rate hike is not good news for the markets, but in this case, it was. It was interpreted by the markets as a sign of a healthy recovery. And so the Dow went up 338 points, the S&P went up 41, and the NASDAQ went up 150 points. And so now Powell himself got into a little bit of trouble. Let's play a clip of Jerome Powell. What number is it where he's talking about it doesn't look good when you're invested in market securities that may be impacted by cut number 15. Jerome Powell.
The issue of ownership of these stocks and trades, do you think it's appropriate for Federal Reserve officials to be owning the same assets that the Federal Reserve is buying? Is that one of the modifications that you're looking at? And in that, you said yourself they're clearly not seen as appropriate. In that, the Fed's code of conduct says Fed officials should avoid even the appearance of conflict. Do those trades, in fact, and holdings violate the Fed's code of conduct? Finally, do you have a timeline as to when you might be done with your review? Thank you, sir.
Don't have a timeline yet. We can start with that. Well, let me address the muni question since that's in there. I personally owned municipal securities for many years, and in 2019 I froze that, meaning I'm holding all those securities, my wife and I, to maturity, and munis were always thought to be a pretty safe place for a Fed person to invest because, as you know, the lore was that the Fed would never buy municipal securities, so it was not an uncommon thing. And so then comes the COVID crisis, and I reversed that policy, and I did it without hesitating. And the reason was that the financial markets, and including the municipal financial market, were very much on the verge of collapse, and it was time to go, and we did. But we also checked with the Office of Government Ethics, who looked carefully at it and said that I didn't have a conflict. So that's one answer that I wanted to share with you. Secondly, you're right, though. We're going to be looking at all of those things. I don't want to get ahead of the process here and speculate about particular outcomes. But this, again, comprehensive and deliberate process. We're going to make changes. I want to be able to look back on this years from now and know that we rose to meet this challenge and handled the situation well, and that what we did made a lot of sense and protected the public's interest and the institution that we're all a part of.
I do not believe for a moment that Jerome Powell has a conflict, but the appearance of impropriety rules mean they're just going to have to change stuff. And so when you do unusual things for the first time, I'll ask Brian Westbury about this when we go to Atlanta. And I will be with Brian and with Alfredo Ortiz of Job Creator Network in Atlanta. AM920theanswer.com for tickets, AM920theanswer.com for tickets. Herschel will be joining us as well at the Atlanta History Center on October 13th. I'll be asking him about the Fed buying munis, but I'll also be talking about this interest rate. What did it do to interest rates? Well, if you're going to buy a house, and you should be buying a house with AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. They are sponsors of the show. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They lend money. I've known Andrew Del Rey for 22 years. I've known Todd Avakian for half that time. And I'll tell you, they're very good guys. They have done my mortgages on both coasts. They've done my families, my kids, my friends, my teams, my staff. They are wonderful, wonderful. I know them personally. There are a lot of people talking about a lot of mortgage services. I know these two. I've been to their team. I know their offices. You can call them at 888-888-1172. And I especially want you to call them if you're a senior citizen who's thinking about a reverse mortgage, because they take a little time. They take a little explaining. They're very good for the right senior. They take some of the equity out of your house. You never make another payment again on your mortgage. Your mortgage is gone. You have to pay your homeowner association. You have to pay your taxes like every other year, but you get the money out of the house that you're living in. A reverse mortgage with AndrewandTodd.com might be exactly what your grandma or grandpa need to do a bunch of things, including maybe move into a retirement home. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. If you want to help a son or daughter become a homeowner, they can also, AndrewandTodd.com, help you become a non-occupying co-borrower. Coming back with Mike Pompeo and Chris Christie. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Salem Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Que lo siento mucho.
And that's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the cross. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Still to this day, there is an all-out assault to the bureaucracies, to the progressives, from academia, to the tech companies, to the corporate tyrants, to crush the United States Constitution. This Constitution is what stands between us and them. And the Constitution is only powerful if we decide to use it. The Constitution allows the sovereignty of the people to continue and to exist. The story of America, as we look back at the peaks and at the summits of American history, we stand in admiration and awe and with gratitude to Hamilton and Madison and Jay and Franklin.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The left hated Trump because they knew he would get down and dirty with them. That's why they hated Trump. Because Trump knew how to play their game, so they had to destroy him. They're used to these Republicans. Well, yes, I'm so sophisticated. I'm smart, and I can run the Senate perfectly, and I can run the House perfectly. So we're going to accomplish A, B, and C. But when it comes to advancing our agenda beyond the courts, that's where I stop. They knew they didn't have fighters. We don't. Who do we have? Who do we have right now in the Republican Party? A handful of people in the Senate, a handful of people in the House that you know are going to press a conservative agenda going forward. But they hated Trump, not because he was unsophisticated. They hated him because he knew them. And that's the same reason they hated Larry Elder. Because they knew that he would cause damage to the Democrat Party. I look at these Democrats that come out and, you know, Nancy Pelosi overseas talking about, she's admitted that, yeah, basically China, there's a genocide of Uyghurs. But she believes that man-made climate change is a bigger issue. So that America has to continue to work with China. That's why they didn't care about, and why they don't care about now, Americans that are still left behind and being held hostage. Americans are still being held hostage, and we're silent.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor. We would have sandwiches with no meat. My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to
Tesla was a
salemnow.com.
genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
The Salem Now.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The interview today with Hugh Hewitt is actually a double tag team. It's former New Jersey Governor Christie, former United States Secretary of State and member of Congress from Kansas, Mike Pompeo. Together, they are going to co-chair the Republican National Trust on redistricting. It's always fun to talk redistricting that can be as dry as dust, though. So, good morning, gentlemen. Good to have you. I'm going to ask a couple of interesting questions before we, scare the audience away, though. So, Governor Christie, I'll go with you first. Do you agree with me that the next time you two are going to be on a stage together, it's probably going to be a presidential debate, and I hope I'm moderating it?
Well, I don't know about that, Hugh, but what I'll tell you is anytime I'm on a stage or any place else with Mike Pompeo, I know I'm going to hear smart, tough, logical talk, and that's why I agreed to pair with him on this, because if we have smart, tough, logical talk that leads to fair maps that are constitutional, the Republicans will be in the House majority in 2023.
Now, we got plenty of time. Secretary Pompeo, you just heard Governor Christie do the politician thing and avoid the question. Do you think the next time you two will be together will be a debate stage on, say, New Hampshire or Iowa?
Yeah, good morning. What Governor Christie just did there was the thing that matters to America. He and I both understand that with our first chance to take a real swing at making sure that Joe Biden can't continue the debacle that we've seen over these last 9 months comes in. Shoot, there'll be people voting in just 12 months, Hugh. In 2022, we've got to make sure that we have a set of maps that allow Republicans to compete fairly. And so I'm confident he and I will be on stages for a lot of time between now and November of 2022, helping candidates be successful. And then we'll all see what happens. Governor Christie led New Jersey in a way that was important for the people of New Jersey. He did great work. He continues to carry forward the Republican cause. The mission's important. We're going to get this done together.
Message discipline among Republicans. I love that. Governor Christie, how's Frankie Lindor working out for you? Ahmed Rosario's batting .279 with 10 home runs and 51 ribbies. Jimenez is doing well at shortstop. How's that Frankie deal looking?
I think, Hugh, it's going to work out great for the Mets in the long term, the same way Mike and I are hoping that these maps work out for 10 years for Republicans. And so I have a long-term view on redistricting. I have a long-term view on the New York Mets. And as a Cleveland Indian fan, you know what long-term means in baseball. So, we're doing just fine.
Well, can you at least assure me that you'll do better in redistricting than the Jets will do at First Energy this year? I mean, the Jets are not in the game. You've got to be in the game on the redistricting. Now get to the redistricting.
I can assure you that we'll do better than that. Absolutely.
All right, now, Mike Pompeo.
And just for the record, Hugh, Army's 3-0. Chris and I are going to do at least that well.
All right, let's talk about the problem here. You two rolled out with Ronna McDaniel a redistricting trust. Eric Holder's been doing this for 5 years. How do you catch up? Let's start with you, Secretary Pompeo. You're both very smart lawyers. Eric Holder's no dummy either. You got to catch up. You're behind. What are you going to do to make sure these redistricting commissions actually deliver real good maps?
You nailed the problem set. We had largely abandoned the field. There wasn't a concrete, serious effort on our side with leaders who were prepared to do the right thing. In so many cases, we just abandoned the field in this competition about how maps were going to be drawn across America. And we allowed that organization that's run by President Obama and Eric Holder to run roughshod over us. Our legislators were often fearful of engaging in the fight, and Governor Christie and I's mission set is to provide them the resources, the intellectual firepower, the money that they may need, and the audacity that we know must take place to make sure that the voters get a fair shot at this thing. We're going to catch up. This is a long-term project. We will make real progress here in 2022. The Democrats are going to sue. Every state legislator across the country needs to know that they're If they fight for fair maps for the people, the Democrats will just sue until they get what they want. We need to be prepared to confront them in every state where this happens.
Governor Christie, we've been out-lawyered, and I mean not merely out-lawyered, but left in a barrel out-lawyered in almost every redistricting challenge. A lot of that is because we keep hiring the same lawyers. Are you and the Secretary going to oversee the legal team that takes on the challenges that must be brought? Because the Supreme Court actually will stand by any map that is fairly produced.
Yeah, that's our goal. Our goal is to make sure that each of these states has the resources that are necessary, as the Secretary said, both financial and intellectual, to make sure that we make the best arguments. But it also starts you with giving them the resources they need to make the best maps to begin with. And the best maps are not ones that favor either party, but ones that are fair and are constitutional. And if we start from that point, it gives our lawyers a better map to defend. And that's what we need to do. So it's a two-step process. It's one, make sure the maps are fair and constitutional off the bat. We do our job that way. Because if we do, by the way, that helps Republicans. Secondly, we make sure that we have the firepower necessary, intellectual and financial, to defend it when the Obama Holder team decides to try to sue their way to gerrymandering to keep Nancy Pelosi as Speaker. And the third thing, and Mike put this really well, you know, we haven't had anybody out there who are willing rhetorically to take Obama and Holder on this fight to set the rules. And that's why we've come together. We're ready to do that. We're ready to take them on frontally and make sure that our state legislators have all the support they need to do the right thing.
Well, this is important because gerrymandering is a cudgel wielded by the legacy media to beat up Republicans. But Mike Pompeo, what the New Yorkers are planning to do is toss out the so-called independent commission map and immediately roll the Democrats in the traditional constitutional fashion. Roll the party that's out of power by the party in power. They're going to do it in Illinois as well. They're going to do it wherever there's an independent redistricting commission like California. They don't like the results. They're just going to roll them. Are you going to challenge the rolling of the independent commissions, or are you going to challenge the existence of the independent commissions, or both?
I'm confident we will do both. Each state will have its own. You just described three very different situations. We're tracking one in Oregon, too, where the Democrats have already welched on the deal that they had made about how that was going to move forward. So every state will have its own situation. You've been watching this. You know the legal issues around this. These commissions have turned out to be, in almost every case, a fraud. The Democrats use it either if they've got the numbers to roll it, or if not, they just boot the commission or kick it out or submit a map disconnected from the commission. It's not about the commission. I want state elected officials all across the country to know the Democrats aren't going to respect process. They're not going to respect fairness. They're not going to do this right. Know that this is a fight. Know that Obama and Holder are leading this fight, and they're well funded by progressives on the left. We have to match that firepower and that capability. And whether it's a commission in a place like New York or in a place like Illinois or a more straightforward political process, we have to present good maps that have been based on data and science and the census data, fight for those maps, defend them, and then when they need support, make sure that they know that there are those of us out here that are prepared to provide it to them so we can successfully make sure that in November of 22 we've got fair maps. And when we do, conservative voters all across the country are going to elect good conservative leaders, and we won't have Speaker Pelosi in control of the House of Representatives any longer.
All right, now this is a pretty difficult legal question, Governor Christie. I personally believe the commissions are all unconstitutional, that the Constitution intended the state legislatures to draw the districts. But what I really hate is heads we win, tails you lose stuff, which is where Arizona packed the commission, got the maps they wanted 10 years ago, and they favored the Democrats. Now they're going to get maps in New York and Illinois, and the Democrats are going to throw them out. The Republicans would never dare do this because legacy media will crush them. Will you, and the Supreme Court may have even hinted at one point that the commission idea may be unconstitutional. Do you expect a facial challenge to the idea of a commission taking away the authority of the state legislature?
Well, look, I think each individual state's going to make their judgment on that. I don't think that's a decision that Mike and I will make, but I will tell you this. I do think that when you look at the Constitution, what our founders intended was for state legislatures to make these decisions. And the delegation of that authority is something that many, including you, believe is questionable. And if those commissions act in a way that is clearly partisan, clearly moves towards gerrymandered maps, I think it'll make the legal argument for our team a much easier one to make. Again, our job isn't to make the legal decisions for the individual states, but once they make those decisions, we hope they make them with our advice and then ultimately with our support to make sure they're successful.
Secretary Pompeo, what do you do about a legacy media? I bet you, I haven't done the work yet, but I bet if I ran a Google search on gerrymandering, that I would find, and I found 100 stories, 99 of them would be attacks on Republicans for doing it. Maybe one would point out Illinois, New York, Massachusetts. What do you do about leveling the playing field of just the coverage of this process?
Hugh, it's a mess. Certainly, you've seen this not just on this issue, but others. You were pretty generous to think you could find that one story that supported the Republican effort. Good luck finding it. It's a real challenge. It's a challenge for all of us. But it's one of the reasons that I think when Governor Christie and I were approached to have to do this, that we wanted to take this on. We have a place where we can make the case, and we will be doing not just shows like yours, but we're going to talk all across the country about why this matters, not just to Republicans, but to every American, to make sure that we get this right, that this redistricting process isn't used in a way that locks in power for a party in a way that's disconnected from how the voters are thinking about who they want as their leaders. It's our job. We can't be victims. The media is what it is today. We've got to confront that, take it on. We've got to make the case to the American people. And I'm confident that Governor Christie and I can be an important part of doing that.
Yeah, this is a great thing. I want to thank the chairwoman for doing it, because to get a couple of media bigs to go out and work together on this, could she add to your agenda, Governor Christie, the killing off, the strangulation of the Presidential Debate Commission, which is a rogue body that ought not to exist and that distorts debates every step of the way? You advised President Trump on how to make it work. It didn't work. What do you think? Can you add that to the agenda of the Pompeo Christie Commission and try and kill that beast in its cradle?
Well, I'll tell you this. Once Mike and I show how successful you can be if you are willing to have the guts to stand up and call Obama and hold her out on what they've been doing to this issue over the course of time on congressional redistricting. If Ronna wants us to take that on as well, I'm sure Mike and I will be willing to step up to the challenge, because in the end, what this is about is getting the information and the opportunity to voters for them to have fair elections that represent the will of the people. And whether that's at the congressional level or the presidential level and everything that surrounds it, that's something that we're for, because we know that if there's a fair and open process on redistricting, and there is an open process that allows for the free exchange of ideas, that Republicans are going to do better than Democrats because our ideas are better.
Secretary Pompeo, this is delicate. Are you going to talk to people? For example, Greg Abbott in Texas is going to be running for re-election even as redistricting gets underway, as will Governor DeWine in Ohio. They're getting beaten up by the local media about redistricting at the same time. Are you going to sit down with the governors of states where redistricting is underway as well as re-election and counsel with them before addressing their state's processes?
I have no doubt that we're going to talk to all of those leaders. It's important. This isn't about one election. Governor Christie hinted at this when he began. This is a long term. These maps last for a long time. We talk about the congressional maps. Don't forget there's state maps being drawn too for every state house seat. You know, we ended up with a Democrat governor because Kansas got this wrong 10 years ago. Someone gets to be a state rep and then a state senator. Next thing you know, they're the governor, and sometimes they become the secretary of HHS and they put Obamacare on the nation. These are important matters. We need every elected official, whether they are running or not, to be serious about making sure they get a fair set of maps that reflect what the people in their state want. I hope no politician will take this as their own personal mission to make sure that they're okay and that the media doesn't beat them up. This is bigger than any one of us. It's why Governor Christie and I are working so closely together on this. This is about the future of these states and our country, and it's really important we get it right.
Governor Christie, you've run for governor before. Greg Abbott's going to probably get a challenge from Matthew McConaughey. What do you think about running against a celebrity?
Yeah. Look, running against a celebrity is never going to be fun or easy. But what we've seen in American politics is that most of the time, with a few notable exceptions here, most of the time, the celebrity doesn't last. And the reason they don't is because they're not ready to confront the issues like someone like Governor Abbott has done over his time in office. So, you know, Matthew McConaughey decides to jump into the race. If that's his call, that's fine. But believe me, you don't get to say cut in politics and do it over. Everybody gets to see what happens. It doesn't get dropped onto the editing room floor when you make a mistake. And when those things happen, Greg Abbott will make sure that the public in Texas sees both his great performance as governor and all of Matthew McConaughey's mistakes. And when that contrast is made, the voters in Texas will return Greg Abbott to office, I'm confident.
Now, Secretary Pompeo, the Redistricting Trust, the National Republican Redistricting Trust, NRRT, are they raising money, or are you two just doing the old go out on the road and talk about it thing? Are they actually raising money to hire lawyers and lawyer up?
Oh, Hugh, this is real. We have a team already. There's an executive director. There's a team of lawyers already working on this. We are working diligently to raise the resources and money that we need. I'm confident that we will have that. So, no, they'll not only be Governor Christie and I out making the case for why this matters and how Republican elected officials should be bold and daring and prepared to confront the Democrats, but they'll have the money, the legal teams that they need to do the hard work, the complex litigation work that needs to be done to make sure that we can follow through on those commitments as well.
Okay, let me end with pure politics. I know you are both out on the hustings for candidates. Virginia votes. In fact, when I go back to Virginia next week, I will go and vote for Glenn Youngkin. I want to get your assessment on that race, both of you. Governor Christie, how do you think it looks for Glenn Youngkin right now?
Well, look, funny you should ask you, because last night I was in Virginia at a fundraiser where we raised over $375,000 just last night for Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, and I sat and listened to him last night. Just as importantly, I spent some time with his wife. These are folks who are serious about this race. This is a jump ball race at the moment, but I'll tell you, this is a strong, serious candidate who I think can very well win that race in Virginia in 40 days. And so I'm glad you're coming back and voting early. Early voting has started. All our Republicans in Virginia should get out there who are listening and vote now. Make sure that vote gets in and gets counted, because I think Glenn Youngkin has a chance to do what Bob McDonnell and I did in 2009 after Barack Obama was elected with a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate, which is to turn it around and start the momentum as we did for 2010 when we took back the Congress. I believe that Glenn Youngkin can start that momentum for 2022.
Secretary Pompeo, what do you think about the Commonwealth?
I'm sitting in Loudoun, Virginia today. Governor Christie said it's a jump ball. That's certainly what the polling data is showing. My sense on the ground is that people understand the difference between Terry McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin and what it will mean to their families, the kids in their schools, and there is going to be enormous support for him. I'm doing an event for another Republican who's running along Mr. Mayaris next week on Tuesday, and people are excited. I want every Virginia Republican to go out and support these candidates who care about their families, care about their communities here in Virginia. And when that happens, I am confident that just like Governor Christie talked about when he ran for governor in New Jersey, I think you'll see the same thing happen here in November of this year.
Last question, gentlemen. If Eric Holder agreed, and maybe he'd bring President Obama with him, would you agree to a debate about redistricting? Because I think the national media would cover that, and I think you two would be a formidable team to go against Eric Holder and President Obama. What do you think, Governor Christie?
I'd agree to it tomorrow.
Secretary Pompeo?
Sign me up.
All right, and you know who should moderate that, of course, a lawyer who knows something about redistricting.
We'll see you there, Hugh.
We'll see you there.
Absolutely.
Secretary Pompeo, Governor Christie, thanks for your time. The Republican Redistricting Trust can be found at National Republican Redistricting Trust, NRRT. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm really glad that Ronna McDaniel has gotten out there and has decided that this is worth. I mean, that's a great development. We haven't got two better brawlers in terms of sticking the message. I try to get them off, try to get them talking about other stuff, and they very adroitly move it right back to redistricting and to the fact that the effort matters more. Now, they're going to be on the debate stage against each other. I was asked yesterday, what's the top tier Republican candidates? I say it's 5 or 6 people. It's 5 or 6 people. Chris Christie, Mike Pompeo are 2 of them. Then you've got Tom Cotton. Then you've got Ron DeSantis. Then you've got Tim Scott. And then you've got Rick Scott. Now, I don't know if all 6 of those are running. I'm not sure Rick Scott's running. I think Tim Scott is, and I think the other 4 are. That is a top tier because none of them have ever run before and they never mixed it up with President Trump. So I give them a slight advantage over anyone who's got any reason to believe that some Trump people are still mad at them. That would include Senator Rubio and Senator Cruz. Nikki Haley's got some Trump people who are mad at her. Governor Noem's got some people who've got some Trump people who are mad at her. And the Trump base matters a lot. It's not the whole party. It's a good 30 to 45% of the party, and the others are somewhere mostly Trump or sometimes Trump or never Trump. And so the Trump factor is big, but those six have no problem with anybody in the party. And that's why I put them in the top tier, and they've never run against Trump before. And so even if the president runs, I think they'll get in. I do. I think both those men are running. They won't say it. They won't say it. But this is just a great thing for them. They get to be the face of the Republican Party fighting Eric Holder and Barack Obama for the next year. This is a great thing for them. Now, Secretary Pompeo, full disclosure, he's co-chair of the Nixon Seminar on National Security with former Ambassador Robert O'Brien. And I talk to him every month about national security stuff, and he's staying focused on the world. And you heard Harvey Mansfield, professor from Harvard, on this show a week ago, Monday, talking about how serious people have looked into the abyss. Tom Cotton and Mike Pompeo have looked into the abyss that is the world right now, and then into the challenge by China to dominate everything, including election technology. We are not invulnerable. I don't think it's happened yet, but we are not invulnerable to the overseas manipulation of vote systems by hackers. We have to make sure that we are. Our system is sufficiently deregulated and sufficiently localized that while it might allow for fraud on the local level, it does not allow for systemic computer hacks. Although we've had a number of bad actors test the systems. We've seen that. We know about that. But the redistricting trust, I think that should aim to do one thing, where the voters of the states have enacted by initiative or duly authorized law a bipartisan commission. They ought to get a bipartisan commission. In Arizona, they voted for that, and then it got stacked with Democrats. The independent who allegedly was the lead person between it turned out to just be a Democrat dressed up as an independent. And by the way, the idea that 9,000 people apply and we'll pick 9, it's just stupid. These are stupid commissions. They're run by people who don't have any idea what they're doing. They're taken over by consultants, and they're funded by the Democratic parties in those states. They ought to go back. They ought to go back to the Supreme Court, and not up to these two to decide this, but they ought to go back and challenge the very idea of an independent commission. That is not constitutional in my view. The Constitution quite squarely puts the authority for drawing the districts in the hands of the Supreme Court. Now, in Baker v. Carr and Reynolds v. Sims, two Supreme Court cases that I teach every year when I teach con law, the court ruled quite explicitly that it's got to be one person, one vote. So the districts have to be numerically equal, whether it's a state legislative district, a state senatorial district, or a congressional district, numerically equal when you start the 10-year cycle. And we know it is unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment to allow race to be used in the drawing of lines unless there's a voting rights exception that allows for black max districts, they're called. And African-American politicians are beginning to figure out that's not a great use of the redistricting power to pack in every African-American voter into one district. They end up underrepresented, not overrepresented when they do that. They ought to just be, the way to end racial discrimination is to end the use of race. I'm paraphrasing Chief Justice Roberts there. There ought not to be the use of race in admissions by state schools. There ought not to be the use of race in drawing of districts. There just ought not to be the use of race, period, in the awarding of penalties or the infliction of penalties or the awarding of benefits, period. But so long as Eric Holder is out there trying to gig the game and rig the game, I'm glad we got Chris Christie and Mike Pompeo out there playing on the other team, making sure it doesn't happen. Good to have those gentlemen on. The full interview will be posted over at The Interview with Hugh Hewitt. Generalissimo will type that up and put it over at HughHewitt.com as well. And the Indians won the trade, Governor Christie. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Nicki Minaj is different because Nicki Minaj can't be controlled by the masters of the universe. They tried to suspend her from Twitter. They tried to kick her off of social media because of what she said. Producer Connor tweeted something out where he said Nicki Minaj is based or Nicki Minaj is right, and he lost access to his Twitter account for 12 hours. You see, that is what this regime is doing. They are clamping down on resistance. So Nicki Minaj did this Instagram live video. To give you an idea of how popular she is, she had 90,000 people watching an Instagram live video of where she was just literally the phone was just showing her ceiling and she was talking. Cut 77, Nicki Minaj says the obvious, something that we've been saying on this program for years. It's scary when they say you can't ask questions about anything. Nicki Minaj, welcome to the revolution. Cut 77.
I simply said we should be able to ask questions and speak. And it's scary when they start telling you you can't ask questions about anything.
Of course you can't ask questions about anything. Nicki, you're a little late to the party here, but welcome. In a unusual turn of events, we now have this broad-based coalition of people that are together, of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's asking questions. Again, I don't endorse everything he says. I just think it's interesting. The son of Bobby Kennedy is asking questions.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
And one of the things that DeSantis has pointed out, because they have had such a big wave in Florida, about half the people who are coming in and getting the antibody treatments are fully vaccinated. So this is not a situation where, it's the bad unvaccinated people in Florida that are getting it. They've got an awful lot of people who directly need this treatment now who are both vaccinated and unvaccinated.
Both vaccinated and unvaccinated. Ron DeSantis is holding the line, though, and he's asking Joe Biden, why are you withholding monoclonal antibodies, which is a phenomenal scientific breakthrough. It's a non-vaccination, non-inoculation treatment that works very, very well. This almost looks punitive. This almost looks like, oh, I don't like Ron DeSantis. I'm going to politically withhold Regeneron from you. Now, this is different than remdesivir, where remdesivir can cause a lot of damage to people, and it's very, very expensive. But Regeneron is not expensive and works really well. Ron DeSantis comes out and he says it's wrong to penalize Florida, sending us less monoclonal antibody treatments. Ron DeSantis wants to set up these treatment centers all across Florida. This would save lives. Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas are getting crushed by this monoclonal antibody decision. Why is Joe Biden doing this? Well, he says go get vaccinated. Well, half of the people that actually are getting the treatment are vaccinated, Joe Biden. Half. Does Joe Biden want to oversee the death of Americans for political gain? Sure, looking that way. Ron DeSantis saying you are literally penalizing Floridians for political gain.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Salem Now.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as
he knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
I am Republican, voted for Trump twice. I sat in my brother-in-law's living room 4 years ago and said, you know, I think if Trump were to lose the election, he'd start a nuclear war. So I don't think that the concerns by the generals were out of line.
I honestly, and you sound like a reasonable and a nice guy, so don't take this the wrong way. I don't believe you when you say you voted for Trump. I don't believe that for 1 minute. No rational person. I mean, do you feel like you're familiar with President Trump? Do you realize that President Trump was the first president since Jimmy Carter not to start a war?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
When black celebrities dare to defy the orthodoxy and status quo, they are immediately torpedoed by the machine. Kanye West, Nicki Minaj, you see what they tried to do to many different black athletes that speak out against forced vaccinations. Nicki Minaj has realized that this regime does not answer questions. They operate with force. This is not a government that persuades people. They are a coercive regime. The First Amendment of the United States protects the things that we are as human beings. We are talking beings. We are thinking beings. We are worshiping beings.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. It's not surprising that Joe Biden wants to turn the page on his incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan and the abandonment of U.S. citizens and our allies there. Almost as unsurprising as the media's craven effort to help him. Even as Americans remain hostage in Afghanistan and the Taliban flaunts the military equipment we left them, the news has shifted to other domestic stories. It's
Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy. For those
Morning Glory America, bonjour, hi Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, inside the Relief Factor studio live. Representative Ken Buck is an old friend of mine. He represents Colorado's 4th Congressional District, and he announced he's running for re-election, so he's going to be running for some district in Colorado. We just don't know which one because the maps aren't out. Good morning, Congressman Buck. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. It's always good to talk to you. I see you occasionally on airplanes and around town. What do you make of the map process? It's a funky one. I was just talking about redistricting with Mike Pompeo and Chris Christie. They're running the National Republican Redistricting Trust. How's it going in the Centennial State?
Well, I think it's going well. We gained a seat, so we went from 7 congressional seats to 8 congressional seats. They have floated a few different maps, and they're coming down to sort of a consensus on the commission on a particular map. It puts me in basically the same district I had before
they had to create an 8th district, and so they came up from the Metro Denver area north to Greeley, which is sort of my home base, and they're putting that in the 8th, so that hurts a little bit. But I think overall they probably did about as good as they could do.
Now, does it? What's the delegation split now? 4-3?
It is 4-3. So for 6 years out of the 10 years of this cycle, Mike Kaufman was the Republican, and the Republicans had a 4-3 advantage. Jason Crow beat Mike Kaufman two elections ago, and so the Democrats now have a 4-3 advantage. And it looks with these maps that the Democrats will probably have a 5-3 advantage, although one seat, this new 8th congressional seat, will be a pretty competitive seat.
Anybody you know lining up to take a shot at that from the good guys?
I don't yet. I haven't ruled that out, but I don't, because I haven't seen the final map of what whether I'm going to be in the 4th or the 8th. But I don't know whether there are other people starting to line up. I think no one's going to really poke their head up until we know exactly where the lines are.
Last question on this, Congressman. When does it settle? I mean, this is hard to run a campaign when you don't know the lines are.
Yeah, and as you know, the North Carolina lines changed as recently as 3 years ago, and so did the Florida lines 4 years ago. So you're never really sure when the lines are going to settle. We're supposed to get a final map and a conclusion by the commission by mid-October. The Supreme Court, Colorado Supreme Court, has promised to finish all the challenges to the maps by December 15th, but then the federal lawsuits start. So it's really very difficult for anyone interested in running for office to make a determination based on the maps.
Yeah, these independent commissions, I hate them. I think they're unconstitutional. I just talked about that with Governor Christie and Secretary Pompeo, but it's nothing we can do about it today. Let's talk about the House. First and foremost, not one Republican should vote for the continuing resolution. Do you agree with me?
I do, yes.
Why?
And I can tell you this Republican will not be voting for the continuing resolution. Look, it spends too much money. It has the debt ceiling extension in there. There are the Iron Dome issue was just an absolute cheap shot. There are a number of reasons not to vote for it, but really what it comes down to is that the Democrats under Pelosi continue to run the most partisan House that I've seen in my time in Congress and that I can remember in my lifetime. And you can't keep running a partisan operation like that and never reach across the aisle, never try to work with people and expect to get Republican votes.
Now, Congressman, they got a 4-seat majority in the House, which is the smallest ever, and they have a no-seat majority in the Senate. They need the vice president. And yet they're proposing basically to bring in socialism to the United States. Has that not caught the attention of, quote, moderate Democrats from Colorado who are allegedly... Tim Bennett's supposed to be, Senator Bennett is supposed to be a moderate. Jason Crow's supposed to be a moderate. How are they voting for this stuff?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't understand. And it isn't as if this is the first year that we've seen this. This is really creeping socialism, and they continue to push year by year, election cycle by election cycle, to bring more and more control under the federal government and spending under the federal government. And I think we are seeing entitlements dramatically increase, and we're seeing the deficit dramatically increase. And I agree that no Republican should be voting for this, and hopefully we'll get some Democrats moving over. And certainly Joe Manchin has talked about the price tag on the $3.5 trillion as being too high, and so is Senator Sinema. And so I hope on the Senate side we get that. On the House side, there's a lot more discipline on the Democrat side, and Nancy Pelosi is known for exacting revenge if people stray.
But I thought Jason Crow was a friend of Israel. I thought you had some alleged friends of Israel, and they stripped out Iron Dome financing yesterday.
Well, I was surprised. Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey and Debbie Wasserman Schultz from Florida. There were a number of people who voted for that really stunned me. I couldn't believe it, not just based on their constituencies, but based on their past.
Well, tell me what you think will be the key issue in your race. You're on judiciary. I'm not sure what you consider to be redistricting is part of judiciary's portfolio, but what do you think matters most to Coloradans based upon what your committee does?
Well, I'm on the immigration subcommittee, and certainly what's happening
bingo.
at the border is a huge issue for folks in Colorado. Into Colorado, putting stress on our education system, our healthcare system, our criminal justice system, you name it, and that's going to be a big issue where I'm from. I'm also on the antitrust subcommittee, and we are fighting against big tech and doing our very best to create competition in the marketplace so that Facebook and Amazon and Apple and Google have some competition and consumers have some choice.
You know, there are a couple of different competing models on what to do about big tech. I'm one of the people that believes you dispossess them of the data that they stole from people by requiring them to pay for it. Other people want to make them a public utility. Other people want to use antitrust to break them up. I'm not a fan of that. What's the Ken Buck solution?
Well, I don't think we break them up with antitrust, but I do think we encourage competition with antitrust. And I agree with you. I think that when I go onto Google, which I don't, but if I go onto Google and conduct a search, that data is my data, and I should be able to determine whether that data goes with me, just like my cell phone number goes with me from one cell phone company to another. I think that my data should be able to go where I search, and the decision to sell that data to advertisers is my decision, not the search company's decision.
It seems to me that search functions profit a company, and that profit ought to be divided with the people that power the search function, which are those who provide the AI to the company, so that there ought to be a rebate. And once you start getting people in on, it's like a Visa card. If they're going to use 100% of your data, you ought to get 3% of the money they make back or something like that. Is there anything inventive? It's a bipartisan issue. People don't like their data being collected.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a bipartisan issue, and yes, one of the bills that we have, and it's getting traction in the Senate also, it came out of the Judiciary Committee in markup and will go to the floor hopefully sometime in October or November, is what we call portability, which is the same idea as this cell phone number being moved from one cell phone company to another. But if you own that data, and there are 4 or 5 different search engines that want to compete for your data, you're going to start to see that kind of rebate. It could be in the form of airline miles or hotel points, or it could be just flat cash back to the consumer based on the ability for the search engine to market that. But you also have the ability to tell the search engine, I don't want anybody to know what I'm searching for. I don't want anybody to know where my location is, and you should have that privacy right also.
Well, I hope that you're in the chair of a subcommittee when oversight begins under a Republican majority and Speaker McCarthy. Last question, Ken Buck. Are you certain that reconciliation will have to be amended to allow the debt ceiling? Because there's a way the Democrats can do it on their own. It takes 4 weeks, but we should not help them. Do you think that's what's going to happen?
Well, I think it is most likely to happen that way, because I don't think that Republicans in the Senate are going to help. They certainly aren't going to give them 10 senators to get this done. And as a result, I think that they're going to have to use reconciliation, and they're going to have to start that process pretty soon.
Amen. If they don't, we're going to default, and it's up to the Democrats. They've got their hands on the wheel. They have the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Republicans are sitting on the sidelines saying, you screwed us. We're not going to help you twice. Ken Buck, good to talk to you again, friend. Don't go anywhere, America. Megyn Kelly and more coming up on the Hugh Hewitt Show this Thursday a.m.
Curious about what you're missing in the universe? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.huniverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.huniverse.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
The accusations were outlandish, coming as they do from a book that isn't even released yet, co-authored by Bob Woodward, who has been irrelevant for the last 40 years, has published books that are based upon supposition and tissues of lies, because this man has no access, especially to a conservative administration like President Trump's. But like those broken clocks that are right twice a day, it seems that this story, that General Milley, 2 days after the events of January the 6th, called up General Lee of the People's Liberation Army of Communist China to assure them that he would give them a heads up if President Trump, his commander, decided to attack China, is the definition of giving aid and support to our enemies. It is the textbook legal definition of treason. Earlier today, the office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who, let's be clear here, for those who are not wonks in the swamp, who haven't spent decades in national security, we have a peculiar system in the United States. What you just heard from Kirby, the Chief of the Defense Staff, is a lie. We do not have a senior uniformed officer in the chain of command like other nations do. The Constitution is crystal clear. America has one commander-in-chief. It's not the Speaker of the House.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
You wrote My Way for your friend Frank Sinatra. Now, all of us, I think in some ways the greatest thing anybody can do is to do something that's so great, people don't even wonder who did it. They just assume it was always there. The same thing with the theme song from The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. You wrote that. Let's go there, because that's just a monumental moment in both of your careers. I mean, he had already had 20 careers up to this moment.
It was Vegas, Rat Pack. I got to know him in the 60s. I hung around him. Let's not forget Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, very talented men. But up until 68, I was still writing. I was living in Europe, which I loved. I had the gravitas of being a writer because of The Tonight Show, The Longest Day, etc. So when I met him in Miami, where we used to work, at the Fontainebleau Hotel, he was doing a film. I was performing. He said, I'm quitting show business. I'm going to retire. I've had enough. Rat Pack's over. I'm being hassled by the G, the FBI, and I'm tired. I'm getting out of here. But I'm going to do one more album. With that, and him telling me that he was quitting and retiring and believing him, I couldn't believe it. So I went back to New York, where I was living at the time, and I'm sitting in my apartment, and I started metaphorically with, and now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. And I started writing it as if he were writing it, and writing words I would never write as a craftsman, ate it up, spit it out, but these were the kind of words that he used. So I finished it 5 hours later. I called him at Caesar's Palace, where he was doing one of his last engagements. And I said, sir, I've got something I think you might like for the album. He said, bring it out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I am hoping that you caught my interview with Kyle Mills yesterday about the new Mitch Rapp novel, Enemy at the Gates. If you didn't, go to the search engine at hughhewitt.com and type in Kyle Mills. It will lead you to the interview and previous ones I've done with Kyle Mills. If you really want to have fun with the search engine, it's under Salem Now. Go over and type in Mitch Rapp, or actually Vince Flynn Vince was a friend. He was a guest in the studio, indeed, during the early days of Mitch Rapp. And Dwayne and I had great fun with Vince Flynn. Go find that interview using the search engine widget over at HughHewitt.com. But go get Enemy at the Gates. Terrific read. You will love it. Let me also remind you that markets had a funny day yesterday. This is brought to you a market report by AndrewandTodd.com, sponsors of the show. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They lend you money to buy houses. If you're a Zillow addict, and people have become Zillow addict, there are a couple of journalists in D.C. that now do Friday Night Zillow. And they go over and they find interesting houses that are on Zillow somewhere by looking around the country for unusual, funny houses. You know, houses that were built in 1650 and houses that are 28,000 square feet for $5,000. They go to Detroit and find you $1 a house or something like that. But Zillow's an amazing thing, and it's gotten people into an efficient market. They know what to pay for a house. Therefore, when a house goes on sale, most brokers underprice it because the market is perfect when it's allowed to function with information. And you're going to need in your hand a pre-authorization letter to buy that house, to tell the seller that you qualify. That's probably the most important function that Andrew and Todd deliver. And yesterday, the 10-year interest rate went up to, checking my screen here, 1.336%. Remember, last week it was in the 1.2s. This week it started at 1.330 on Monday. Now it's up to 1.336. Yesterday, Jerome Powell announced that the feds will begin raising interest rates in 2022. It means homes will get more expensive next year. It means you should buy a home today. Now, that was good for the markets. They like that, because it says to them the economy is cooking. So the Dow went up 338 points, the S&P went up 41, and NASDAQ went up 150. Part of that was a rebound from an overreaction to a Chinese bankruptcy of a developer in the PRC yesterday, or threatened bankruptcy or imminent bankruptcy. It depends on what the all-powerful Oz named Xi in China decides. But markets got rattled 2 days ago. They rallied yesterday. Interest rates went up after Jerome Powell talked. So if you're going to buy a home, do it now. If you're going to help your son or daughter, grandson or granddaughter get into a house by becoming a non-occupying co-borrower, meaning you'll sign on the loan and put your full faith and credit on the line along with theirs, go to AndrewandTodd.com, fill out the question form, find out indeed what it will cost, why you want to help them. Yesterday at the White House, we've got this budget crisis, right? We've got a fiscal cliff coming up. We have an imminent demise of the full faith and credit. Democrats need to fix that. They need to fix it on their own. There's not going to be any Republican votes because they rolled the Republicans. And all we got was nonsense. No one talked about it. They did, however, get to the pressing issue by April Ryan of whether or not horsebacked Border Patrol agents on horseback will continue to roam the border. Cut number 3.
Members of the Congressional Black Caucus were here today meeting with the National Security Team, Cedric Richmond and Susan Rice.
Yep.
Can you give us an update, because they were talking about Haiti, the immigration issue at the border. Could you give us an update on that and what is expected for tomorrow's meeting with civil rights leaders, be it teleconference or what have you, with White House officials?
Just what do you mean by an update exactly? An update on what happened in the meeting?
What happened in the meeting, what was given to them, what did they ask for? Because black leaders are making big asks of this crisis moment.
Tell me more about what you think they're asking for.
Okay, what they're asking for, the asylum process, what does that look like? Reverend Al Sharpton is going to the border tomorrow to see what that looks like. If people are actually being able to get asylum, who's here. Also, you talked about the condemnation of what the patrol agents were doing with the reins or whip, whatever, with the intent to lash, to hurt people, to keep them away from the border. They want to know, is that practice going to still be in place? Horses and the lashing, those kind of issues.
So I just wanted to have clarity on exactly what you were asking about, April. That's
yeah,
it.
she just wanted to filibuster. I'll be right back, America. Megyn Kelly joins me next on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I'm gonna get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Three generations of imbeciles are enough, declared the Supreme Court in Buck versus Bell. Decision of 1927. I'm reading from timeline.com. Quote, it is better for all the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. That decision was written by Oliver Wendell Holmes, and forced sterilization became fully legal in the United States. The case came at the height of popularity for the pseudosciences of eugenics, which maintained that negative character traits like criminality and stupidity were entirely the product of bad genes. The court decision that set the precedent for government intervention on the sterilization of women was the Jacobson v. Massachusetts. Thankfully, many decades later, there was a lawsuit that included Dolores Madrigal, who was the lead plaintiff in the 1978 case, which brought suit against L.A. County's USC Medical Center for its non-consensual sterilization of Mexican-American women in the 1960s and 70s. It would make sense why certain communities are apprehensive of the government forcibly putting medicine on you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
On January the 8th, 2 days after the riots on Capitol Hill, General Mark Milley called General Li Zhongcheng of the People's Liberation Army of Communist China. In that call, he said the following: "We are 100% steady. Everything is fine." And he assured the communist general that there would be no attack on China. Now, on the one hand, I have to say the whole story is absurd because what attack on China? When did Donald Trump, in relation to January the 6th or any time, say that he's about to launch a nuclear attack against nuclear China? It's garbage. But Milley is the man who, remember, acted like a politician when he did a video apologizing for standing next to his commander-in-chief after he walked across Lafayette Square after days and days and days of rioting, hundreds of police officers injured, and the church of the president, St. John's Episcopal Church, was firebombed. Milley was ashamed of the restoration of order because Donald Trump was his commander-in-chief. So, with that fact pattern in mind, with his assertion that critical race theory is great, should be taught at West Point, I'm white and I want to know what white rage is, it is absolutely plausible that this man did what he did.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Got blood on my hands. Got blood on my hands. And I don't understand what's happening.
Welcome back, America. That is John Androsik of Five for Fighting with his new single, Blood on My Hands. I'm going to go see John in concert this weekend. That single has now been viewed 300,000 times on YouTube, although it's been blacked out by the mainstream media. Five for Fighting, of course, the owner of many platinum hits, including Superman, 100 Years, etc. But they don't want to play John's song because it's critical of President Biden, General Milley, and Secretary of State Blinken. I'm joined by Megyn Kelly, who knows a little bit about being blacked out by media. Good morning, Megyn. How are you?
Hi, Hugh. I'm great. How are you?
Good. How's the podcast thriving? You're still among the most listened to people in America?
It's doing very well, and now we're live on Sirius XM between 12 and 2 p.m. We're sort of doing the podcast live, so that's been super fun.
Excellent. Now, tell me one thing. Are you a fan of John Androsik? Do you know about his music?
Yes, he's amazing. That song is absolutely haunting, and I'm not surprised one bit it's getting zero play from the mainstream.
They sent out a press release yesterday talking about the song's origin to more than 3,000 media outlets, including Rolling Stone. Not one story. It's a blackout, Megyn Kelly.
You know, I heard him, he was talking to Glenn Beck, and Glenn was making a good point of, since when did rock and roll become about doing and saying what the man wants you to, right? Hasn't it always been a middle finger to the man? And that's exactly what he's doing, but because the man in charge right now happens to be a Democrat, the media is blocking him out. They're not interested in his message. So it's for all of their performance art, trying to pretend that they were horrified about what happened in Afghanistan, as soon as they had the chance to turn the page on that story, they did, and they're not interested in anything that's going to take us back to it.
And I firmly believe if the rules that are in place now about not criticizing presidents had been in place when Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young wrote to Ohio, it wouldn't have gotten any airplay. But now it's changed because of the Democrat in the White House. I hope you join me in continuing to give attention to Blood on My Hands. Megyn, I want to do something now that I regret doing. I've always liked David Frum. He used to be a fairly nice and influential person. He's been disintermediated from influence by Donald Trump because he went crazy. I mean, he literally went nuts. Now, you and I both have Trump tattoos. And so I can show them off. I can proudly stand up with those people who can line up in the media who've been assaulted by Donald Trump verbally and who've lived to talk about it and laugh it off. David was kind of knocked off the balance beam. He's attacked you this week as being an anti-vaxxer. Now, I think you actually support vaccines like I do. I'm vaccinated. I get to get my booster tomorrow. I am going to applaud when my grandchildren get vaccinated because their mother has done a study of it and they're safe and qualified for it, and 2 out of the 3 of them will be eligible for it. Why is David Frum attacking you wrongfully, libelously, really, as an anti-vaxxer, which is almost slander per se in our business?
It's kind of amusing to me. I'm definitely not an anti-vaxxer. I've said repeatedly that I'm pro-vaccine. I've gotten it. My husband's gotten it. And I think everyone who wants it should get it, but I don't like these mandates, and I really don't like them for children. And I've said publicly, I have 3 kids, not one of whom is yet eligible for the vaccine, but I did lose my dad to a heart attack at age 45, and I have a heart issue, and I worry about my children and their hearts because they've got a genetic predisposition to some frailty there. So I'm watching the myocarditis thing very carefully, and this should be a decision between their pediatrician, my husband, and me. And it shouldn't be forced on them by Joe Biden or anybody else, Dr. Fauci. And there's a reason that the folks in Europe have made a different decision. Our friends in the UK are not requiring 12 to 15-year-olds to get this. And even when they get to be older, 16, they're only requiring one shot, because all of the myocarditis seems to be happening after the second shot. Okay, so these are the considerations by people we don't consider insane, our friends across the pond. So David Frum tweets out the other day when the Pfizer report breaks that Pfizer, the manufacturer of the vaccine, is saying they've had a robust immune response in 5 to 11-year-olds and they think it's safe. And they had no myocarditis so far, but they only tested 2,200 kids, and those side effects tend to be 1 in 5,000. So they're not yet at the numbers where they would show up anyway. So he tweets out, we ought to force these vaccines on all of the, quote, anti-vaxxers and learn from our mistakes. The stigma that comes with shaming the anti-vaxxers is what it's all about, is essentially what he said, and that they're right, that that's a big part of it. So we should start shaming them and mandate this as soon as it gets emergency use authorization. And I tweeted back to him, you do not have to be an extremist anti-vaxxer, however he phrased it, to have some concerns about vaccinating a little when the virus poses very low risk to them, and we're not yet sure about these vaccines. There's been no long-term testing. That's what had him label me an anti-vaxxer. I laughed because if you just go back and listen to my show, you'll hear me all the time promoting the vaccine. But this is the lunacy of those who have just lost their minds when it comes to these vaccines.
It's performance tweeting. And I really do believe a lot of performance tweeting comes from those who have been disintermediated from influence, and sometimes from the American Enterprise Institute and other places where they used to hang their hat and are now charity cases at Jeff Goldberg's pleasure. And so I read yesterday another thing that David said. So I thought I would just run this off. Matt Lewis, a friend of mine, he went on Matt Lewis's podcast, which is typically pretty good. And he said, David did, the Republican Party is an elderly party. It's a party of people with chronic health problems. One of the things that was true in 2016, if you found a county where there's a lot of obesity and drug abuse, that's where you had a lot of Trump votes. He went on, there is something compensatory, I think, about this cult of physical prowess. It's people who at some level feel physically weak. There are all these weirdly homoerotic fan images of Trump. Trump can't lift a glass of water, can't walk down a ramp, hasn't done any meaningful physical exercise ever in his life. The idea that you would make this a fetish about him, it says something about your doubts and your needs. You know, this is weird, Megyn. This is just weird.
Homoerotic. Do we have to go back to the Obama days and talk about how the media feted him? I mean, please, don't get me started. But I love when I hear people like him write like that or say things like that, because they've dropped the veil altogether. This is what they think about the right half of the country. Meanwhile, on the vaccine front, which is what he's really railing on, there are large portions of the African American community that do not want this vaccine for very good reasons. They don't tend to be Trump sycophants. How does he explain that? And to dismiss all Republicans as old white guys who are having homoerotic fantasies about Donald Trump. I'll tell you, 2 weeks ago, I was down in Houston with Dan Crenshaw with a Crenshaw Youth Summit, and there were thousands of excited young conservatives, black, white, Latino, you name it. This is a guy who hasn't left New York City in a very long time and thinks the rest of the country is just like them. Voted 87% in Manhattan for Biden.
I had Pastor Robert Jeffress on yesterday so that he would endorse the vaccine, which he has done, because he's a big Trumpy pastor. I mean, he's a very strong supporter of the former president, but he is also a big supporter of the vaccine. I believe in persuading the vaccine hesitant by a patient, educated argument as to its benefits and why the benefits far outweigh the risks for almost everybody. You do have to consult your doctor if you've got an underlying condition. And I am, however, I'm not a 100%er. I think mask mandates for preschoolers are insane. And I think if a parent says my child has a speech problem, they ought to be allowed to dispense with the mask completely, because speech cannot improve if they cannot speak clearly and if they often don't see the teacher. So there are some gradations here. And I think the people that are full on, well, extremists like David, it's not really about the vaccine. It's about performance art so that people will pay attention to them again.
and control. That's one of the things I hate about the masks. I am definitely more rabid on the anti-masks for children thing than I am on the vaccines. I've got 3 kids. They sit in class all day long, 9 hours with masks on. Just last week, my 11-year-old was forced to be outside doing squat thrusts and planks and sit-ups and push-ups in a mask outside. He said the boys were sweating through their masks. This is absurd. The CDC did a study on kids in Georgia, 90,000 of them, 90,000. David Zweig in New York Magazine wrote about it. And what the CDC found was that masks were not a factor in preventing COVID, that they did nothing. Why hasn't that study been everywhere? Because it doesn't fall into this narrative of like, we all have to wear the masks. It's our social responsibility. Maybe not. Certainly not with the young ones. It hasn't proven to be an effective means of mitigation. And yet the hand of big government is across my 8-year-old's face all day, while AOC can go to the Met Gala without hers on. These Hollywood celebrities can go to their Emmy Awards without theirs on. Oh, but vaccination. Okay, all the kids, K through 12, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, California, vaccinated or not, they have to sit there all day with those things, those muzzles across their face. I've had it with the masks.
Well, I think this is why Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins, both of whom are welcome guests on this show, are losing credibility by the gallon, because parents who are living the day-to-day, and my daughter and you have the same issue, their kids do not do well with masks. They ought not to be mandated. It ought to be a parental choice issue. We will see what we will see. Let me close quickly, Megyn. I had on Governor Christie and former Secretary of State Pompeo earlier today because they're heading up the National Republican Redistricting Trust. And I asked if the next time they'd be together would be on a debate stage. And they laughed and, of course, diverted from the question. Do you think the Presidential Debate Commission should be abolished?
I do, actually, because, I mean, you look around last time and it was all Democrats and never Trumpers. So Trump at that time, he wasn't wrong that the system was rigged against him. I mean, in many ways, but the Presidential Debate Commission, there wasn't somebody who was open-minded to Trump on there. And that's the risk. And I don't really understand what function it serves when we could have such alternate approaches to this. You know, I know Trump last time around suggested Joe Rogan do a debate. Now, I personally wouldn't support that, even though I like Joe Rogan. I do think he's admitted he's not fact-based, right? He's just sort of, he throws stuff at a wall. I think you do need people who are fact-based to tee up the questions. But why do we rely on these guys who are about 200 years old to randomly pick, you know, a few sort of select journalists, all of whom tend to be biased against the GOP, to run the national conversation?
I can do it in 5 minutes. I could get Eddie Glaude and Megyn Kelly. I could have Rachel Maddow and Hugh Hewitt. I could get Guy Benson and Mary Catherine Ham and a couple of lefties, and we would have a great time, and it's just time to get rid of the septuagenarian, octogenarian debate commission. Megyn Kelly, always good to talk to you on Sirius FM from noon to 2. Just please don't move to the mornings.
No, I won't.
All right.
We got that worked out between us.
All right, good deal. Megyn Kelly, always a pleasure. Listen to her on Sirius. ReliefFactor.com is my great sponsor. They're here every single day, 3 times a day. Why? Because if you're going to exercise today, it'll be better if you use ReliefFactor.com. And if you're just sitting around like I am today, I'm going to go have lunch. I'm going out with Billy, the former lifeguard, who's had a lot of cutting and scraping on his bones. I got to tell him, ReliefFactor.com. I might take him a bag of it, although the cheap son of a gun never buys lunch. I'll buy lunch, so I probably won't give him ReliefFactor.com. But you ought to do it. $19.95, 3-week starter pack. Try it. See if your aches and pains that come with exercise and aging do not let up. See if it works for you. If it doesn't, don't renew. If you do, however, like me, fine. It's the only supplement I take. It's the only supplement I've ever taken, except for a vitamin, which I've taken even longer than ReliefFactor.com. Then stick with it. Your life will be better for it. Coming right back, America. Don't go anywhere. The Hugh Hewitt Show rolls merrily along with Roger Marshall. Senator Marshall, Dr. Marshall, and I talk vaccines right after this. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Simon & Schuster's Enemy at the Gates, the latest in the Vince Flynn series by Kyle Mills.
things. This most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands. Kill him. Jump.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build the superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
You wrote My Way for your friend Frank Sinatra. Now, all of us, I think in some ways the greatest thing anybody can do is to do something that's so great people don't even wonder who did it. They just assume it was always there. The same thing with the theme song from The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. You wrote that. Let's go there because that's just a monumental moment in both of your careers. I mean, he had already had 20 careers up to this moment.
It was Vegas, Rat Pack. I got to know him in the 60s. I hung around him. Let's not forget Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, very talented men. But up until 68, I was still writing. I was living in Europe, which I loved. I had the gravitas of being a writer because of The Tonight Show, The Longest Day, etc. So when I met him in Miami, where we used to work at the Fontainebleau Hotel, he was doing a film. I was performing. He said, I'm quitting show business. I'm going to retire. I've had enough. Rat Pack's over. I'm being hassled by the FBI, and I'm tired. I'm getting out of here. But I'm going to do one more album. With that, and him telling me that he was quitting and retiring and believing him, I couldn't believe it. So I went back to New York, where I was living at the time, and I'm sitting in my apartment, and I started metaphorically with, and now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. And I started writing it as if he were writing it, and writing words I would never write as a craftsman, ate it up, spit it out, but these were the kind of words that he used. So I finished it 5 hours later. I called him at Caesar's Palace, where he was doing one of his last engagements. And I said, sir, I've got something I think you might like for the album. He said, bring it out.
Keep up with what's trending.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live today on this Thursday, joined by Dr. Roger Marshall, who is also Senator Roger Marshall, representing the great state of Kansas. Good morning, Senator Marshall. Good to have you on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hugh, good morning. Thanks for having me back. We've got a lot to talk about today.
We do. I just talked with Megyn Kelly about vaccine mandates. She and I are both already vaccinated. I'm going to go get my booster tomorrow. I'll be eligible tomorrow. I'm a big fan of vaccine mandates. I believe the military ought to be vaccinated, but you're going to bring a bill that I think also makes sense. I think common sense ought to rule the day on this. Tell us about your bill.
Yeah, Hugh, again, like you, I've been vaccinated. My parents are vaccinated. I'm pushing every senior to consider getting that booster shot as well. But what is happening right now in the military is they are separating soldiers who are refusing the vaccine. And what our bill would do is keep them from giving them anything except an honorable discharge. And the White House last night exploded against this. The White House says, oh, no, they're going to get a dishonorable discharge. There's going to be a showdown at the OK Corral over this one. And just lastly, I'll say I'm just so disappointed the CDC will not acknowledge natural immunity because half of these soldiers have, maybe more, have natural immunity. I'm told that our National Guards that less than half of those soldiers, the enlisted people I'm talking about, are vaccinated. So this is about to be a national security crisis.
Now, Dr. Marshall, I say Senator Dr. Marshall, I have been very, very, very vocally pro-vaccine from the beginning. I am pro-booster. I am pro-everyone. And I wanted mandates for the military and for anyone who works for a state government because it's the right of the state to require people. But there are legitimate concerns among young people about the enlarged heart. It's not a big risk, but it's a little risk. And therefore, they might choose not to receive the vaccine. I do not understand a dishonorable discharge because it's a new vaccine requirement that is coming after they enlisted when there wasn't a vaccine requirement. What is the White House's beef? Because this is extremism that, in fact, hurts the vaccination effort.
Hugh, I don't understand their beef except to say that they are. This is their culture, right? They're socialist. And if you look at the White House, how many of these folks actually have military experience outside of the Secretary of Defense, I think, and of course General Milley. So I think they just don't understand the culture of the military. But just to push back a little bit on the vaccine mandate part of this, the incidence of pericarditis for an 18-year-old male from this shot is 50 out of a million, versus the chances of them being hospitalized from COVID is 5 out of a million. So we're not talking about hepatitis, or which is life-threatening for an 18-year-old, or yellow river fever, or whatever it is, which is life-threatening to an 18-year-old. So as a physician, I always want to step through and weigh the benefits of the risk. So what are the benefits of this vaccine to an 18-year-old? Very minimal. What are the risks? They're significant. And I respect that these younger people not getting the vaccine. You and I, we need the vaccine. Our parents need the vaccine. They need the booster shot. But do young 18-year-old men and women need this vaccine that are otherwise healthy? I think there's plenty of room for argument on that.
And doctor, my response, I'm not a doctor, you are, but I have talked to Fauci and Collins about this. My response is that the number one job of the American military is to be ready at a moment's notice to defend the United States. And if even one of the members of the military or the logistical support train of, say, a SEAL team that needs to go abroad and rescue Americans is compromised by COVID, that's one too many, and that therefore it's one of, and they're also transmitters of the virus to seniors, and they may not know it. It's not because of them. It's not because they're at risk of it, but I do understand the heart issue and the level of risks and benefits. So I wouldn't hurt them, but I would mandate it. So we have a disagreement. That's a political disagreement.
Yes,
but there's no messaging disagreement. Punishing people for disagreement is, in fact, counter-effective in getting people to get the vaccine. That's my point.
You nailed it, Hugh, as usual. You've nailed it. And my last point here, it's just great. This is the professional argument discussion that people should have, is if the military would acknowledge, and the CDC acknowledge, natural immunity, which is even better than the vaccine, then that's going to eliminate half of this argument. If a third of our enlisted people get kicked out of the military over the next week or two with a dishonorable discharge, it's going to be a domino of problems. We're not going to have anybody to send with that SEAL team, right?
Yeah, I just do not understand why it has to be a dishonorable discharge. I don't think the numbers are going to be large. I do believe in the mandate, but I just do not understand punishing someone in America because they did not sign up. It's an all-volunteer army. And they wouldn't have volunteered if this mandate was there. That's clear. And it is it's called mutatis mutandis. I'm a lawyer. Change circumstances. And so are you going to get any Democrats to agree with you on this bill?
Well, we're going to find out. I sure hope we can. Somehow we got to get it to the floor. We're circulating among Democrats now, and we'll see if we get any takers.
The rule of reason. If everyone would just go with the rule of reason and be calm about this, the country would be well on its way to having COVID in the rearview mirror. Dr. Senator Marshall, always a pleasure. Thank you for coming on today.
You bet, you. Great discussion. Enjoy your show.
Thank you, sir. And I hope all of you enjoyed the show as well. We're going to post Megyn Kelly. We're going to post the audio of Senator Marshall. We're going to post a transcript of Mike Pompeo and Christie joining with me on the Hugh Hewitt show earlier today. Lots today in the rearview mirror, but you should have in the front view mirror being back tomorrow. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Adam. Thank all of you for listening to the Hugh Hewitt show.